Chapter 1535. Prince Jonathan left. Gu Xingyin looked at the man who was emitting a cold aura and had an "I'm not happy" expression on his face. "Are you angry?" she asked. Raymond didn't say anything. Gu Xingyin shook her hand that was still held by him and said, "Don't be angry. It's not worth it to be angry over someone who has nothing to do with you." Raymond turned his head and saw the little mermaid who was only as tall as his shoulder. She was looking at him with her big blue eyes without blinking. In the gentle eyes of the spring, he could see his own reflection. The annoyance and irritation that had risen in his heart gradually subsided under such comforting words. He held her hand tightly and nodded, "You're right, Diana. It's not worth it to be angry over someone like that." His expression softened, and he leaned over to Gu Xingyin's cheek and planted a gentle kiss. Gu Xingyin looked at Raymond with her eyes wide open. To be able to become the Empire's Prince Charming, in addition to Raymond's status, another important factor was his appearance. This marshal who had conquered countless men and mermaids in the Empire was undoubtedly very handsome. It was just that he always had a cold and unapproachable appearance, which made people feel that there was an unerasable barrier between them. But now, his aura had softened, and even the corners of his mouth were raised, revealing a very faint smile. The barrier disappeared in an instant. The charm of this appearance was finally fully displayed in front of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin had seen too many beauties. But at this moment, she was still impressed by Raymond. For the gentleness that melted for thousands of miles of ice. Her hand uncontrollably touched Raymond's face, and she murmured, "You look so good when you smile, Cager." Raymond let her touch his face. He lowered his head and gazed at the little mermaid in front of him. Her eyes were filled with pure love, as if the moonlight had suddenly shone on a peaceful blue lake. It was so bright that he could not take his eyes off her. He couldn't help but move closer to the blue eyes. The gentle touch lingered on her eyes. Gu Xingyin felt a warm breath brushing past her face. "Do you like it? From then on, I'll smile for you every day." Fortunately, both of them still remembered that they were outside. This place was not hidden, and with their identities, it was not suitable for them to stay for long without any disguises. Gu Xingyin even saw people pointing at her and Redmond and whispering. "Where do you want to go?" Raymond asked. Gu Xingyin turned around and smiled at him. "Don't you have to go to the military headquarters today?" Raymond shook his head. "I have plenty of free time." In fact, Raymond's attitude towards work had been regarded as a role model by countless people. With his position, there was no need for him to sit in the military headquarters office every day. There were not many things that could trouble him. Basically, the marshal was only required to attend the regular meetings of the military headquarters. The rest of the time, he was free. It was just that before Gu Xingyin appeared, there had never been anyone or anything that could make Redmond take advantage of this free time. After hearing Raymond's answer, Gu Xingyin tilted her head and thought for a while. Then she said, "Then accompany me to meet someone?" Raymond did not ask who it was and only nodded. Chapter 1536. But soon, he knew who Gu Xingyin was going to see. The address that Gu Xingyin gave was the mermaid prison in the imperial capital. According to Raymond's understanding of Gu Xingyin, the only person who appeared in the mermaid prison and was related to his little mermaid was the mermaid who was detained for attempting to harm Diana. Her name seemed to be Audrey. But now, Audrey was not just detained. She was sentenced to 13 years in prison and provided the Empire with genetic research samples for free. The former was not a big deal, but the latter punishment was serious. Providing the Empire with research samples for free meant that Audrey would not have freedom for the rest of her life. Even if she was released after serving her sentence, she would only be jumping from a prison without freedom to another prison without freedom. Providing genetic research samples for free and without a time limit, that was to say, Audrey's life would be sold to the Imperial Research Institute. She could not get married, she could not maintain close contact with people, and every part of her body would be used as research material. Mermaids did not have the death penalty. Even those murderers who committed serious crimes would be treated like Audrey after being caught. Obviously, someone was not willing to let Audrey off too easily. Audrey's family had thought of many ways and begged many people, but no one dared to intervene in this matter. Because they all knew who made Audrey like this behind the scenes. That person wanted her to live a life worse than death, and they had no way to change it. The arrival of Marshal Raymond made the warden of the mermaid prison very uneasy. He did not know why this person suddenly came here. Raymond waved his hand and said that his fiancée wanted to see a mermaid, and the warden was relieved. He was really afraid that this person would come for a surprise inspection or something like that. Gu Xingyin saw Audrey in a small room. It was really a small room, except for a white bed and a tall white cabinet about the waist of an adult. There was nothing else. Audrey was wearing a gray top, sitting on the bed and staring at the wall in a daze. Hearing the movement, she turned around a little sluggishly. Seeing Gu Xingyin's face, her pupils shrank, and then she immediately lowered her head. Obviously, she didn't want her former competitor, she thought, to see her in this state. However, even that glance was enough for Gu Xingyin to see her face clearly. Audrey was a lot more haggard. The face that was always rosy and shiny was now only pale, and her eyebrows drooped because of the imprisonment without freedom. Her long, flaxen hair, like seaweed, turned yellow. Audrey's whole person seemed to be old. This old did not refer to her appearance, but spirit. She still looked very young, but when you looked at her, you would not think that this was a mermaid who had just become an adult. It seemed that these few months, these days, Audrey's life. Perhaps the long silence made Audrey a little uneasy. She suddenly looked up and glared at Gu Xingyin. "What are you doing here? Are you here to see me make a fool of myself?" It was only then that she saw the man standing beside Gu Xingyin, shielding her in a protective manner. Audrey's heart shook, she knew him. In the whole empire, there was no one who did not know this man. Chapter 1537. Cager Raymond. A man that was almost mythical. Audrey almost reflexively shrank back. The momentum that she had gathered with great difficulty also disappeared in an instant. In fact, very few people had the courage to face Raymond head-on, including the soldiers of the empire. Audrey's reaction was not strange. Gu Xingyin looked at Raymond helplessly. How did it feel to have a fiancé who was a winner in life? Gu Xingyin felt very good. However, she still had some things to say to Audrey, so she told Raymond to go out for a while. Raymond was obviously not very willing. He did not want to let Gu Xingyin be alone with a dangerous person. Especially this dangerous person, who had once tried to kill Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin persuaded him in every possible way, and pointed to the room and said that there could not be any dangerous things in it, so Raymond walked out of the door. He also told Gu Xingyin that he would be outside the room, and if there was anything, remember to call for him. Gu Xingyin quickly said yes. Only Gu Xingyin and Audrey were left in the room. Audrey had just seen the interaction between Gu Xingyin and Raymond. She saw Marshal Raymond, who was high and mighty in front of everyone, take a step back for this person in front of her. It seemed that in front of her, he was not the marshal who held the real power in the empire, but just an ordinary man who was willing to make his fiancée happy. How could Diana's life be so smooth? It was precisely because of people like her that others felt indignant. The things that he had painstakingly pursued had been easily obtained by others without any effort. "Are you here to show off?" Audrey asked this question for the second time. Gu Xingyin looked around. She seemed to be looking for a place to sit, but unfortunately, she could not find it. Then she would just stand. Gu Xingyin looked at the haggard woman who still had a trace of hostility in her eyes. She chuckled and said, "If you think I'm here to show off, then so be it." Audrey, who had been emotionless for a long time, suddenly flashed a trace of anger in her heart. Yes, no. Diana, this woman, was completely whetting her appetite. She said coldly, "Are you happy to see me like this?" Gu Xingyin calmly looked at Audrey. She sighed softly and said, "Audrey, I really don't understand why your words are always so sharp. I don't think I've ever offended you." Audrey snorted coldly and did not speak. Gu Xingyin continued, "Just like that time when you asked me to meet you." I originally thought that you really wanted to reconcile with me, and I was very happy. But you pointed your gun at me. Audrey's eyebrows trembled. That was the craziest thing she had ever done in her life. In retrospect, it was really stupid. If she could choose again, she would definitely not do such a thing. So what if she could not marry Prince Jonathan? She could still live a life surrounded by people, and she would meet a man who would take care of her in the future. Instead of sitting in this small room with only one iron window, quietly staring at the sunlight outside for the whole day. She had long regretted it. But it was useless to regret. Unless there was a powerful person who could influence the Supreme Court of the Empire to stand up for her. Chapter 1538. Wait a minute. Someone powerful enough to influence the Empire's highest court? Wasn't there such a person in front of her? Audrey's eyes suddenly lit up. Her eyes shone brightly as she looked at Gu Xingyin as if she was the savior of the world. Diana, I was wrong. I was really wrong. At that time, my mind was muddled. I thought you were going to marry Prince Jonathan. I was momentarily blinded and... Audrey looked at Gu Xingyin pleadingly. I really know I was wrong. Diana, can you forgive me? She looked at Gu Xingyin without blinking. She had clearly seen Marshal Raymond's eyes when he looked at Diana. His eyes were filled with love and tenderness. As long as Diana spoke, Marshal Raymond would definitely not sit by and do nothing. In the entire Queso Empire, there were less than 5 people who could influence the Empire's highest court. Marshal Raymond was obviously one of them. As long as Marshal Raymond wanted to save her, there would be no problem. The key to getting Marshal Raymond to open his mouth was Diana. Audrey looked at Gu Xingyin with hope. She thought of the Diana of the past. Kind and naive. Didn't others say that about her? She would definitely help her. However, under her burning gaze, Gu Xingyin shook her head slowly and firmly. Gu Xingyin looked at Audrey and asked, Audrey, have you ever thought about what would have happened if I didn't fall that night? Audrey was silent for a moment. Of course she knew. She knew before she fired the gun. The power of the laser beam was too strong. If Diana's body had encountered it, there would be no chance of luck. So, Audrey, what position do I have to forgive someone who wanted to take my life? Gu Xingyin asked. Audrey looked at her like she was looking at a stranger. But you fell. I didn't hurt you, Diana. Now I know I was wrong. Aren't you the kindest and most understanding mermaid? Please forgive me this time. I'm sure I won't dare to do it again. I was really wrong. At this moment, even if Audrey was asked to kneel down and beg for mercy, she wouldn't say a word. She felt that she would go crazy if she were to stay in such a prison for such a long time. There was no social interaction. Her daily activities were in this room that could not fit anything other than the bed. Initially, she had accepted her fate and given up. However, when she suddenly saw Gu Xingyin, she was like a drowning person who saw a piece of driftwood. She had to hold on tightly, trying her best to find that slim chance of survival. But no one was a fool. Especially Gu Xingyin. She looked at the crazy Audrey and shook her head in pity. I can't forgive someone who wants to kill me, Audrey. Besides, have you given up? Even if I forgive you, you won't be able to leave this place. Audrey carefully looked at Gu Xingyin's face. After making sure that there was no possibility of her being shaken, she withdrew the expression on her face. She returned to her previous stupefied expression. She stared at Gu Xingyin mockingly. It said that you, Diana, are the purest and kindest person. I think you're just putting on an act. Gu Xingyin had expected her to be like this. Audrey had such a character. If you couldn't bring her any benefits, she would belittle you to be worthless. Chapter 1539. So Gu Xingyin didn't even bat an eyelid when she heard this. She looked at Audrey and said, I'm a little soft-hearted. Audrey, but that doesn't mean I'm stupid. You always think you're the smartest person in the world, but you're the one I can't see through the most. Audrey didn't want to argue with Gu Xingyin. After confirming that she couldn't take her back, she sat back down coldly. She even turned around and didn't want to look at Gu Xingyin. She said coldly, "You're going to be Marshal Raymond's wife soon. You're the winner, and I'm just the loser. So no matter what you say, you'll think you're right." Gu Xingyin saw that Audrey was still stubborn and didn't want to admit defeat, so she knew this conversation wouldn't work out. But she didn't come here to chat. She looked at Audrey and said, "Then just take it that I'm here to announce the good news. Audrey, I'm going to marry Kegel at the end of the year. He loves me very much, and I love him very much. We'll be very happy." Audrey suddenly raised her head and stared at her. "Why are you saying this to me?" She clearly knew that she would be like this for the rest of her life, but she still wanted to show off her happiness in front of her. Gu Xingyin chuckled, "Why? Just take it that I'm here to show off to you. Seeing that you're living so miserably and I'm so happy, I'm really happy in my heart." Although she said this, her tone and expression didn't show any arrogance, so it was hard to tell whether she was telling the truth or not. But Audrey obviously didn't have time to tell the truth. She just kept repeating Gu Xingyin's words in her mind. She was very happy, she was very happy, and she was very miserable. Ah! She suddenly hugged her head and cried out in pain. Almost at the same time, Raymond broke the door and walked to Gu Xingyin's side, subconsciously protecting her in his arms. Then he carefully checked to make sure he was fine. After that, he looked at Audrey. He didn't have a good impression of this woman. Seeing Audrey in pain, Raymond just asked casually, "What's wrong with her?" Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I just said a few words to her, and she became like this." The doctor in the prison came quickly. After examining Audrey's symptoms, it was determined that she had been overly stimulated and her spirit had become extremely unstable. But the doctor didn't think it had anything to do with Gu. After all, people like them who worked in prison would often encounter one or two mentally ill patients. Most of the time, they're mentals. They've been living in a semi-closed prison for a long. And this discomfort, once a breakthrough is. Audrey's symptoms were the most likely to appear. "What will happen to her?" Gu Xingyin asked. The doctor replied, "If the situation is good, he may be able to recover after a period of rest. If the situation is not good." He looked coldly at Audrey, who was hugging her head and shivering on the bed. "I'm afraid she'll be like this for the rest of her life." Gu Xingyin looked at Audrey, who was sitting on the bed. She was hugging her head with her hands, looking frightened and muttering something. Obviously, hers condition was very bad. Chapter 1540. Raymond didn't care about Audrey's life or death. In his eyes, it was fine as long as Deanna was fine. As for Audrey, a person who tried to hurt Deanna, even if she died immediately, Raymond wouldn't feel anything. It was ridiculous that Audrey tried to make Gu Xingyin say good things about her in front of Raymond. She didn't know that the person who wanted her dead more than Gu Xingyin was Raymond. Even if Gu Xingyin was persuaded by her, Raymond might not let her go. Why would Audrey be sentenced to such a severe punishment for murder? Audrey couldn't guess, but Gu Xingyin could faintly guess that Raymond must have something to do with it. "Let's go." Gu Xingyin's hand was held by Raymond. She looked up at him. The matter here was already over. She just asked the system. Audrey really wasn't pretending. She really couldn't bear it and broke down. In this case, there was no need for her to continue to stay here. Raymond tightened his grip on Gu Xingyin's hand. He originally thought that Gu Xingyin would be afraid, but it turned out that his little mermaid was very brave. The two went back from here. Gu Xingyin didn't look back. She knew that she wouldn't come here again in this life. She had dinner with Raymond, and then prepared to send Raymond back. When she returned home, she met the eyes of her 4 family members. It was rare that her second brother Jason was also home. However, compared to the other 3, he was more excited and happy. Seeing Gu Xingyin, he quickly asked, "Did you have a good time with Marshal Raymond? What's he like in private? Is he as cold and unapproachable as usual?" "Well, Jason, your sister just came back, let her rest for a while." Mrs. Casey looked at her youngest son with some helplessness. If Jason was a girl, she was afraid that he would fall in love with his future brother-in-law. Jason only reacted after hearing his mother's words. He smiled a little embarrassedly, quickly pulled Gu Xingyin to sit on the sofa, and politely handed her a plate of cut fruit. Speaking of which, besides Gu Xingyin, among the four of Leonard's family, Jason was the happiest about Gu Xingyin and Raymond being together. His most beloved sister and the marshal whom he admired the most would become a pair of partners. This was simply a matter that couldn't be any better. Gu Xingyin casually picked two things to tell her family. Leonard's family of four looked at her face. Even if they didn't feel good in their hearts, they still felt relieved. In any case, Marshal Raymond treated Deanna very well. The two of them had a good relationship. There was nothing more delightful than this. The next day, as soon as Gu Xingyin woke up, the communicator rang. Deanna, have you seen the hottest news on the star web? Sophia's tone couldn't hide the excitement in her voice. Gu Xingyin covered her mouth and yawned a little. What's wrong? I just woke up, I haven't seen it yet. Sophia didn't say anything, she just smiled mysteriously. Did you go on a date with General Raymond yesterday? Gu Xingyin was a little confused. How did Sophia know? She casually opened the star web. Then she knew why Sophia knew about this. Chapter 1541. Gu Xingyin looked at the large photo on the front page of Star Web, thinking that not only Sophia, but the entire Queso Empire should know that she went on a date with Raymond yesterday. That photo was of her and Raymond at the plaza in the central city yesterday. After Prince Jonathan left, the two of them spent some time together there. That was probably when the photo was taken. In the large photo at the very top, the handsome man lowered his eyes and carefully held the eyes of the girl in his arms with an extremely cherishing gesture. Such a gesture made the cold atmosphere around him seem to have softened. And the petite girl was held in the man's arms. Only half of her delicate and fair side profile was revealed in the camera. Her beautiful facial contours and long golden fan-like eyelashes could be seen. It was clearly just a candid photo, but the atmosphere between the two of them was so harmonious and beautiful. Gu Xingyin looked at the photo with appreciation for a while and found that she was very satisfied. The photographer's skill was pretty good. She continued to scroll down and saw a few more photos. She raised her head slightly and reached out to touch Raymond's face. Raymond, who never allowed others to step into his territory, indulged the girl's behavior almost to the point of indulgence. There was also the way the two of them interlocked fingers, and the way Raymond personally bought a drink and handed it to her. Gu Xingyin looked and couldn't help but laugh. So this was how it was when she interacted with him? She continued to scroll down and saw the netizens' comments dailily. Holy shit, it's blinding my dog eyes. This definitely isn't the Honorable Marshal Raymond I know. Blue, I agree with the previous poster. This definitely isn't the Honorable Marshal Raymond I know. Blue and white porcelain, this is the rumored tempered finger softness, right? It looks so blissful. The sofa is mine, so the Honorable Marshal also has such a gentle appearance. The interaction between the two is so warm. The Marshal really dotes on his wife. A cup of water is not water, although this photo is beautiful, the angle of the photo is bad. Can you let me see the Marshal's wife's complete appearance? Although it's only half of her face, I seem to see a peerless beauty. Lick screen a beauty in my arms, absolute beauty +1. Also, the person above, good luck to you. How dare you lick the beauty of the Marshal's wife? Scoundrels like us can only look up. A roll of toilet paper, admiring the beauty of the Marshal's wife. In addition, light a candle for the screen licking above, ha 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 ha. Gu Xingyin flipped through a few pages with great interest. As expected, Raymond's popularity was not just for show. The message had only been posted for less than half an hour, but there were already more than 100,000 comments. What kind of terrifying speed was this? No wonder he was called the nation's Prince Charming. Hey, Deanna, are you still there? Sophia's voice came from the other end of the communicator. Gu Xingyin replied, yes, I'm reading the news you mentioned. Speaking of this, Sophia became excited. My God, let me tell you, Deanna, your family's Marshal Raymond is really too handsome. A cold, domineering, and aloof Prince Charming is actually so gentle and doting on you. Oh my God, just thinking about it makes my heart melt. You don't know, Gu Xingyin listened to Sophia's long speech helplessly. She knew that this girl could talk for 10 minutes if she was in a good mood. She even took the opportunity to wash up. When she came back, Sophia was still talking. Chapter 1542. Let me tell you, Diana, you have to keep an eye on your family's Prince Charming Raymond. You didn't see the comments below. Even though you know he has a fiancée, there are still a lot of merfolk who are willing to give birth to his children. Sophia was obviously very excited. Gu Xingyin timely interrupted, Don't worry, Sophia. I'm confident that he'll only love me. Sophia didn't say anything for a long time after hearing her words. After a long while, she said, I'm convinced. Diana, you've changed too. Now you open your mouth and spread dog food. My fragile little heart can't take it anymore. Gu Xingyin laughed, I have to teach Earl Allen these words. Sophia instantly fell silent. After a while, Sophia said, Say, Marshal Raymond should also know about this, right? I wonder what his reaction will be if he finds out he's been photographed. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, he'll probably be very happy. She understood this man. He should be eager to announce their relationship to the entire empire in a high-profile manner, to tell everyone that she belonged to him. No matter how many worlds he had experienced, his possessiveness had never changed. Moreover, take today's photos as an example. Without Raymond's permission, the Star Web would never dare to put up their photos without his permission. It was just that she couldn't say these words to Sophia. She could only vaguely reply, I don't know. Sophia was obviously dissatisfied with this answer, but with her understanding of Gu Xingyin, she probably knew that she had just woken up. You're up and go eat early. See you at school this afternoon. The two of them were already adults. There was still one semester left in the merfolk school. Gu Xingyin had been staying at home ever since she was injured because of Audrey. No matter what, she had to go to school today. Okay, see you this afternoon. Gu Xingyin walked downstairs. Her parents and eldest brother were all there. Only her second brother was nowhere to be seen. He had obviously gone to the army. The three of them sat at the dining table and looked at Gu Xingyin with a hesitant expression. Gu Xingyin picked up the milk product and took a sip. If you have anything to ask, just say it. Cough. Mrs. Casey was the first to speak. She looked at her daughter. Yesterday, you went to the shopping mall in the city center with Marshal Raymond? Gu Xingyin put down the cup in his hand and looked at her helplessly. Mom, don't be so careful. I saw the news. It's true. A smile appeared on Mrs. Cassie's face. Anyone could see the deep affection between the two from the photos. They could also see the tenderness and care General Raymond had for the girl in his arms. Mrs. Casey had to admit that even though she was a mother of 3 children, she couldn't help but feel her heart fluttering when she saw those photos. She thought that at this moment, all the unmarried mermaids in the empire were probably wishing that she was the happy girl in Marshal Raymond's arms. Her impression of Marshal Raymond had also improved qualitatively in an instant. He had a good family background, he was capable, he was handsome, and he cherished Diana so much. What was there to be picky about with such a son-in-law? Even the other 2 men in the family who were originally dissatisfied with Raymond were completely speechless. Chapter 1543. Mermaid School. A hover car stopped here. Today was the end of the school's monthly holiday. Naturally, many mermaids would be sent to school by their families. Uncle Jack was sitting in his small recliner, squinting his eyes leisurely in the sun. Suddenly, he noticed that the hairs on his body were standing on end. This was the sign of encountering a top expert. Uncle Jack pretended that nothing had happened and turned his head to take a look. However, this glance stunned him. Under an ordinary-looking hover car, the man who came out was a face that no one in the Empire would be unfamiliar with. Raymond got out of the car and personally opened the door for Gu Xingyin. In fact, with current technology, the door could be opened automatically. But Raymond liked this kind of etiquette, which originated from the ancient Blue Star era. He felt that this could better reflect the importance he attached to his fiancée. Uncle Jack looked at the mermaid who came out of the car. Oh, it was Deanna, who often greeted him and loved to smile. Right, she seemed to be Marshal Raymond's fiancée. Old Jack continued to lie back, slowly thinking about the news he had seen a few days ago. It was said that the Raymond family had been preparing for a long time. They would wait until Deanna graduated, and then the two would get married. Due to the school rules of the mermaid school, Raymond did not enter the school. Old Jack could hear that he was telling the little mermaid something. Old Jack smiled knowingly. Young people, they had just been together, and it was inevitable that they would be reluctant to part. He could completely understand. Didn't he and the old woman go through the same thing in the past? Raymond finished what he was going to tell them. He leaned over and gently planted a kiss on Gu Xingyin's forehead. I'll pick you up at the end of the month. Since the news, the Leonard family had completely accepted this son-in-law, and Raymond had basically taken over the matter of picking up and sending Gu Xingyin. This could also be regarded as cultivating feelings. Then, old Jack heard the girl's cheerful voice, Grandpa Jack, good afternoon. Old Jack smiled and waved at her, watching the girl's figure walk away. He inadvertently turned around and saw the marshal standing quietly at the school gate. His eyes were fixed on the white figure. It seemed that he would not leave until the person disappeared from his sight. Raymond seemed to have noticed old Jack's gaze as he glanced at him. He didn't say anything and only nodded slightly. Old Jack only grinned. A girl who was polite and kind would always have good luck. Old Jack mumbled to himself. Deanna and the marshal would be very happy. Time passed quickly. The days at the mermaid school were no different from usual. If there was a difference, it was that everyone knew that this was the last time they would be together. When the students met, they would smile at each other and occasionally have a meal together. Their relationship was much better than before. There were also some who were more mature and had already begun to learn how to socialize within the family. For example, Gu Xingyin, the wife of the future marshal, became the target that everyone wanted to curry favor with. Gu Xingyin felt a little sad about this change, but she knew that it was unavoidable. With her status, there was no need for her to consider so many things. It was better for them to continue their relationship as usual. For those who were only acquaintances, it was still better to be indifferent to them. Chapter 1544. The Mermaid School. The teachers watched as the students said goodbye to them one by one. They had been here for many years. After a while, they would have to go through such a farewell. It was a cycle. Although they were used to it, they still couldn't hide their sadness when it came to such a moment. After Gu Xingyin said goodbye to all her teachers, classmates, and friends, she walked to the man standing behind her. This day was the only time that outsiders were allowed to enter the school. The robots had already packed up everything and went home. Gu Xingyin only needed to leave with Raymond. Voices could be heard from behind him. Quite a few people had already recognized Redmond. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but sigh. With a fiancé like you, I really don't feel safe. I'm going to become the love rival of the whole empire. Raymond shook her hand, apparently amused by her words. He lowered his head, and his warm breath entered her ear. You have no love rival, Deanna. My heart will always beat for you. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but twitch her ears. She looked behind her and saw two mermaids looking at her with red faces. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel proud. So what if they were the love rivals of the empire? No matter how many people were jealous, they could only watch. Raymond looked at Gu Xingyin with a smile. She didn't hide her expression at all. He could easily see through her thoughts at the moment. It was obvious that her thoughts pleased him. The next step was to send Gu Xingyin home. When they got out of the car, Raymond suddenly grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand. Gu Xingyin looked at him with some confusion. Raymond looked at her deeply, his eyes full of joy. Deanna, my little mermaid. Very soon, you will become mine. Gu Xingyin knew what he meant. According to the agreement between the two families, their wedding should begin soon. The Raymond family and the Leonard family. One had power, the other had money. The combination of these two families was the wedding of the century. The eager citizens of the empire finally saw the bride's full face on the live broadcast of the Star Web. As a result, the comments below changed from "Lucky Mermaid, Marshall, I'm willing to give birth to your child," to a large wave of "Beautiful mermaids are all other people's, Marshall Raymond is so lucky, the angelic Marshall's wife," interspersed with the comments. After the wedding, the live broadcast site actually received millions of comments. There were even people of the Imperium who were arguing over whether the Marshal was lucky or the Marshal's wife was lucky. The flames of war were much fiercer than the fights between the fans of the Empire's stars. However, none of this affected Raymond and Gu Xingyin. Raymond held Gu Xingyin's hand firmly and placed a resplendent gemstone ring on her finger. "I hope to use this ring to encircle you for the rest of your life," he said softly in her ear. Gu Xingyin smiled and didn't say anything. She also took the ring in her hand and firmly put it on Raymond's finger. Then, she motioned for Raymond to lower his head. Raymond obediently did as he was told. Then, Gu Xingyin tiptoed and whispered the same thing into his ear. "I'm greedy. I hope to use this ring to encircle you for the rest of your life." Chapter 1545. Ever since he was born, Dinok Raymond had been favored by the heavens. He was the heir of the Raymond family. His father was the leader of the Casso Empire's military. His mother was from the richest family in the capital, the Leonard family. Needless to say, since Dinok was born, his physical attributes could be said to be perfect. Plus, he had inherited all the good points of his parents. Anyone who saw Dinok for the first time would say that he was like an angel from the ancient Blue Planet's records. But Dinok always had a little secret in his heart. He felt that his father didn't like him. Why? Every time his mother wanted to hug and kiss him, his father would stand up and sternly say, "The men of the Raymond family can't be coquettish. They can't be spoiled." Actually, he really liked his mother's soft and fragrant hugs. Little Dinok felt wronged. One day, he climbed up the fake mountain in the family's garden to think about life. Then, he accidentally fell asleep. He didn't know that his disappearance had turned the entire Raymond family upside down. He saw the family's servants looking for him in a hurry. And his father, who was always calm and indifferent, had a rare anxious expression on his face. He was worried about him. Dinok suddenly felt warm in his heart. Then, he climbed out of the fake mountain. If time could turn back, little Dinok swore that he would never climb out before his mother came home. Because when his worried father saw him, the anxiety on his face disappeared and was replaced with his usual coldness. The little guy instinctively felt that something was wrong and wanted to run. But how could he outrun his father? Dinok's but blossomed. When Gu Xingyin came back at night, Dinok had already cried himself to sleep. In a daze, he seemed to hear his parents talking. "Such a small child, how could you be so cruel?" The gentle voice was his mother's, but it had a trace of complaint. Then, his father's voice sounded. It was different from the coldness of the day. When talking to his mother, his father's voice was always very gentle. "Diana, I can't be lax with Dinok. He is the eldest son of the Raymond family. In the future, he'll have to shoulder the entire Redmond family. He'll have to hold up the sky for his mother. He'll have to protect his younger siblings from the storm, and he'll also have to deal with the conflicts and threats from the outside world. If we spoil him now, we'll be harming him in the future." His mother's low voice could be heard. "I know, but such a small child. I feel uncomfortable just looking at him." Her father's calm voice seemed to be comforting her. "Our son can do it. Dinok is my pride and joy. He is also the child that I have poured my heart and soul into teaching. He has never let me down. He will be the strongest man in the Empire in the future." Dinok didn't hear the rest of the sentence clearly as he fell asleep again. However, the stone that had been pressing down on his heart all this time suddenly disappeared. He was his father's pride and his mother's protection. So it wasn't that his father didn't like him. As Dinok fell into a deep slumber, he couldn't help but smile. He dreamed that he had become the most powerful man in the empire, even more powerful than his father. He would become the pillar of the Raymond family, just as his father had hoped. Chapter 1546. This was a story that couldn't be more ridiculous. The original owner, Zhong Yuji, lived in a very happy family. Her family was rich, but her parents' relationship was very good. They didn't have the disputes of other rich families. Zhong Yuji graduated from a famous university. She had a boyfriend with a good family background. Her boyfriend was very good to her. Zhong Yuji used herself as an example to tell others what it meant to be a winner in life. However, a car accident tore off all the concealment. Her mother's bones were not cold yet, and her father couldn't wait to bring a woman home. That woman also brought a daughter who was the same age as Zhong Yuji. And one. Zhong Yuji couldn't accept that her mother had just passed away for less than a month, and her father was preparing to remarry. She made a big fuss at home, but her father, who always loved her, scolded her. The woman who was brought home had a gentle temperament. She always stood softly by the side and never interfered in the matters between the father and daughter. And that one, like her mother, just stood on the side quietly. This attitude made her father feel that his daughter, who he had carefully raised, was actually so vulgar. This was not the biggest blow to Zhong Yuji. The most desperate thing was that once she woke up late and didn't go out. She just happened to hear her father and that woman talking. And one was the child of that woman and her father. What husband and wife love, the model of a rich family, it was all a joke. Her father, since they got married, loved someone else. He even had a child with another woman not long after he and her mother got married. She couldn't hold back and stood out to question them. In the end, her father only felt a little unnatural. After that, he said that he wanted Wen to acknowledge her ancestors. He actually wanted to acknowledge that illegitimate daughter. No, perhaps in his heart, Wen, this illegitimate daughter, was even more precious than his own daughter. Zhong Yuji ran out angrily. At this time, the only person she could think of was her boyfriend, Zhong Cheng. But when she drove to Zhong Cheng's apartment, what she saw was him hugging and kissing another woman. Gu Xingyi knew that woman. She was her good sister, Wen. Her mother stole her mother's husband, and now, she came to steal her boyfriend. Zhong Yuji didn't even have the strength to question them. She leaned on the steering wheel and cried. But she didn't expect that a drunk driver would rush over. When Zhong Yuji died, she was still in a daze. This time, those bitches were really lucky. She couldn't accept it. Gu Xingyin silently looked at the plot of this world. She was simply disgusted. This world was simply a concentration camp for scums. Regardless of whether it was the two-faced father, the mother and daughter who entered the house, or Zhong Cheng who cheated on his girlfriend. All of them were the best. She scanned her surroundings and found herself in an elegantly decorated room. He was wearing pajamas and had a slight headache. It should be the after effects of sleeping late. She looked at the time, it was 9:30 in the morning. Gu Xingyin rubbed his forehead and dragged his sore body to the bathroom. After washing up, he felt much more refreshed. She raised her head, looked at the girl. Chapter 1547. She had a good appearance and temperament. But she looked a little pale. Gu Xingyin compared Zhong Yuji's memory. Her mother had just left, and her father brought someone else back. She didn't have a good rest during this time. No wonder she looked so pale. She tidied herself up, pushed the door open and walked out. Yen, you know that Rua just left. If I announce your and Wenwen's identity at this time, the woman standing in front of her father was obviously crying. But I followed you for no reason. I've been here for so many years. But what about Wenwen? She'll be laughed at by others. Gu Xingyin sneered in her heart. Now you know you'll be laughed at by others? Aren't you and your mother a joke for a long time? Then she heard her father's comforting voice. Yen, don't worry. Wenwen is my daughter. I won't let her be wronged. In the original plot, Chong Yuji couldn't help but rush over to question the two when she heard this. But Gu Xingyin thought that Gu Xingyin was making a scene now. It was not a good thing for her. She recorded this quietly and then went back to her room. After a while, she walked out of the room again. This time, she saw the two people sitting on the sofa in the living room politely. Yuji, you didn't go out today? Father Chong asked. After graduation, Chong Yuji opened a fashion design studio with several of her friends. Usually, she would go there at this time. Gu Xingyin answered, I don't feel well. I won't go today. At this time, the woman sitting aside didn't speak. She called Yuji weakly. Gu Xingyin pretended she didn't hear it. She raised her wrist and looked at the watch. She said to Father Chong, I'll go out first. Father Chong didn't know what he wanted to prove in front of that woman. His face suddenly darkened. Your auntie is greeting you. Chong Yuji, where's your upbringing? Gu Xingyin's face also turned cold. I don't remember my mother having any siblings. Where did this aunt come from? She tilted her head and looked at the woman sitting on the sofa who seemed to be at a loss. My mother hasn't even passed away for 100 days, and you can't wait to welcome such a person into the house. I don't care if you want to raise this plaything, but if you want me to treat it respectfully like an elder, no way. Her expression was filled with endless resentment. She's just a shameless woman. Who does she think she is? The blood drained from An Yan's face after hearing those words. In fact, she had seen Chong Yuji's mother many years ago. At that time, Chong Yuji's mother was still a high and mighty young lady. She lived wantonly and ostentatiously. When she saw Chong Yuji, she also looked at her with disdain. Now, more than 20 years had passed, and her daughter was still looking at her with the same gaze. Her fingernails dug into her palms as she told herself to endure. She had endured for more than 20 years. What did she rely on to stay with Chong Mingang all the time? Wasn't she gentle and considerate? Now she finally killed Chong Mingang's first wife. Wasn't she just a spoiled young lady in her 20s? She could still trample her under her feet. Chapter 1548. So she didn't say anything when she heard that. She just sat on the sofa with a pale face and cried silently. In Chong Mingang's eyes, this made his heart ache. In his heart, this woman had been a mistress for more than 20 years. Now that his wife had died, he wanted to take her back. What was wrong with that? Why did Yuji become like this? Didn't she understand his difficulties as a father at all? But Chong Mingang had never thought about how much he had done to his deceased wife and innocent daughter. How much he had gone overboard. He glared at Gu Xingyin and said, What are you talking about? Why don't you apologize to Auntie An? Gu Xingyin knew that Chong Mingang didn't dare to do anything to Zhong Yuji. Zhong Yuji's mother, Lu Qinghe, was the daughter of the Lu family. The Lu family was more powerful than the Chongming family in the capital. He couldn't wait to take An Yan and her daughter back after Lu Qinghe died. This already made the Lu family very unhappy. If there were rumors that he treated Zhong Yuji badly, the Lu family would make trouble. Gu Xingyin knew this, so she directly talked to An Yan. She just wanted to let this woman know that even if she married into the Zhong family, so what? She couldn't get what she shouldn't get. Gu Xingyin slowly tidied up her hair and said to her father, Father, if you don't want me to say something worse, don't provoke me. I will never be able to live in peace with this woman. After saying that, she walked out of the door, completely ignoring how angry her father was behind her. To say something unfilial, that kind of man wouldn't shed a tear even if he was angered to death. After Gu Xingyin left, An Yan covered her mouth and burst into tears as if she could not hold it in any longer. Women like her knew what kind of crying could make a man pity her the most. Sure enough, her father quickly began to comfort her. Ah, Yan, don't be sad. Yuji has been spoiled by me and her mother since she was young. She has a bad temper. Don't take her words seriously, An Yan sneered in her heart, but her face was full of sorrow. I really didn't know. Yuji, she actually hates me so much. Otherwise, I just moved back, although she said this, she was certain that Chongming Gang would definitely not agree. If she really moved out, wouldn't it mean that he, the head of the family, actually compromised with his daughter? For a man like Chongming Gang who cared a lot about his reputation, this was absolutely intolerable. As expected, Chongming Gang immediately got angry. Don't mention this again. Don't worry, Yen, with me here, no one will dare to make you leave this house. And Yen was so touched that she snuggled into his arms. Gu Xingyin didn't even let the system monitor what happened after that. She didn't even need to think to know what the two of them would talk about. She didn't want the system to tell her anything to disgust her. She didn't go to her own fashion design studio. Instead, she drove to her boyfriend Zhong Cheng's apartment. Zhong Yuji and Zhong Cheng could be considered as close friends. They were recognized as a golden couple. In the eyes of outsiders, Zhong Cheng loved his girlfriend Zhong Yuji like a treasure. Like a treasure? He loved his girlfriend like a treasure, but in the blink of an eye, he was with another woman. Gu Xingyin sneered. And Wen was her mission target. But she never thought that this woman would be a threat to her. Because she still had a big secret in her hands. Chapter 1549. The big secret was that Wen wasn't Zhongming Gang's daughter at all. To be honest, Gu Xingyin was shocked when she knew about it. Zhongming Gang treated the mother and daughter as his treasures and was touched that Yen stayed outside for more than 20 years for him and raised his daughter alone. But he didn't know that Wen had already cheated on him more than 20 years ago. In the original plot, after Zhong Yuji died in a car accident, the Liu family couldn't take it anymore and directly went to question Zhongming Gang. At that time, they expressed their doubts about Wen's identity, and Zhongming Gang naturally denied it. But the Liu family had always been tough, and they directly dragged Wen to do a paternity test. The result was completely out of everyone's expectations, and Wen and Yen were not related. When Gu Xingyin saw this, she was even curious about the expression on Zhongming Gang's face at that time. She always thought that the lover who treated her with all his heart actually had an affair with someone else long ago, and even the child wasn't hers. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but laugh. No matter what, she was happy as long as this kind of person was unhappy. Soon, they arrived at Zhong Cheng's apartment. As a typical rich second generation, Zhong Cheng's apartment was located in a high-end residential area in the city. Gu Xingyin parked the car by the side and walked towards the destination. Before she arrived downstairs, she saw the young man and woman who were pulling each other. The two seemed to be arguing about something. The woman was more emotional, and the man was softly coaxing something. Anyone who saw it would think that this was a young couple who was at odds with each other, not a man with a fiancée and his fiancée's illegitimate sister. Gu Xingyin continued to walk forward as if she didn't see it. Zhong Cheng and Wen were both emotional and didn't notice her at all. When Gu Xingyin was almost beside the two of them, Wen said something and Zhong Cheng pulled her into his arms and kissed her passionately. Gu Xingyin saw this scene and stopped to think for a while. Fortunately, Zhong Cheng had always been the one who took the initiative in the relationship between Zhong Yuji and Zhong Cheng. Zhong Yuji didn't even know whether she was more dependent on him or more in love with him. The two of them hadn't reached the final step yet. Otherwise, Gu Xingyin herself would feel disgusted at the thought of such a man. Wen resisted at first, but after struggling for a while, she went completely limp in Zhong Cheng's arms. Seeing that she was finally appeased, Zhong Cheng finally breathed a sigh of relief. He raised his head and was about to say something to Wen when he sensed that something was wrong. They turned around and saw that Gu Xingyin was looking at them with a faint smile on his face, only 4 or 5 steps away from them. Yuji? Why was she here? Zhong Cheng's heart skipped a beat. He then saw that Gu Xingyin was playing with a mobile phone. She had even taken a picture of him and Wen's actions. Seeing Gu Xingyin like this, Zhong Cheng was a little flustered. When he saw that he was still hugging Wen, he quickly pushed her away as if he was scalded. Wen was pushed so suddenly that she almost fell to the ground. Zhong Cheng, what are you doing? Wen couldn't help complaining. When she raised her head, she saw that Zhong Cheng was looking at a certain direction anxiously. She raised her head subconsciously and saw the woman she hated most in her life. Chapter 1550. Zhong Yuji. If someone gave An a gun to let her kill a person without any criminal responsibility, there was no doubt that she would shoot Zhong Yuji. From the moment she entered the Zhong family, Zhong Yuji had never looked her in the eye. She always looked at An with a sneer in her eyes. She looked at An as if she was looking at a bug that couldn't be exposed to the light. An was flustered when she saw Zhong Yuji. But after the reflexive panic passed, she calmed down and even felt a little secret complacency. Look, your boyfriend was in my arms just now. She wanted to see Zhong Yuji's arrogant face being torn apart. At the thought of this, she slowly straightened her body and still had the strength to tidy up her messy hair. She called out to Gu Xingyin in a gentle voice. Gu Xingyin didn't pay attention to her at all. She just looked at Zhong Cheng with a sneer. Don't you want to explain? Seeing that she was ignored, and Wen was so angry that she gritted her teeth. You are so cruel. Zhong Yuji, one day, I will tear your arrogant face into pieces by myself. Zhong Cheng was flustered in his heart. He had known Zhong Yuji for so many years. It would be a lie to say that he had no feelings for her. Besides, after so many years, even if it was fake, he had pretended to be sincere. Besides, Zhong Yuji had a good family background, a good appearance, and a good temperament. In all aspects, she was much better than An, who wanted to stay with her mother. Without hesitation, he blurted out, Yuji, believe me. I've been blinded by greed all this time. I just played with her. The one I like is still you. An, who was also waiting for his answer, almost broke her teeth when she heard that. Played? It turned out that in Zhong Cheng's heart, those sweet words and intimate interactions were just for fun. Her eyes became cold. Sure enough, her mother was right. Men were all cheap bones. What they said could never be taken seriously. Her expression was noticed by Gu Xingyin, who noticed it from the corner of her eye. She looked at Zhong Cheng without batting an eyelid. Play. Hearing her tone, Zhong Cheng thought that she was still hesitating. At this moment, he only wanted to please Gu Xingyin and make her believe his words. It was not easy to find such a good girlfriend. Zhong Yuji was Zhong Minggang's only daughter. If there were no accidents in the future, the Zhong family's business would be hers. Moreover, her grandfather was from the Liu family. If the Zhong family could get the support of the Liu family in the future, thinking about how the Zhong family had grown in just a few decades, Zhong Cheng's heart burned with passion. He definitely had to coax Yuji. Thinking of this, Zhong Cheng hurriedly nodded, that's right, Yuji. You know that I've always only had you in my heart. I'm really just playing with her. Think about it. How can an unpresentable daughter of a mistress be compared to you? Gu Xingyin looked at Wen's pale face with satisfaction. This feeling isn't bad, right? An. The man who tried so hard to snatch from me only treated you as a plaything to play with. She was too lazy to tear it up herself, because she knew that someone would tear it up for her. Gu Xingyin, who had seen enough of the drama, withdrew her gaze and looked at Zhong Cheng, who was looking at her with expectation. Under Zhong Cheng's gaze, she said slowly, oh, you're just playing with her. What does that have to do with me? Chapter 1551. Gu Xingyin coldly looked at Zhong Cheng, who was looking at her in disbelief. She smiled coldly. Whether you really love her or play with her, what does it have to do with me? Zhong Cheng felt bad. He still wanted to say something to save the situation, but Gu Xingyin didn't want to give him another chance. Zhong Cheng, do you think that after I see this kind of thing, you can easily apologize and this matter will be over? Gu Xingyin stared at his face with sarcasm. Zhong Cheng, I'm not so cheap. After saying that, she turned around and looked at An, who was standing aside obediently with her head down. This woman should be secretly happy when she heard what she said just now, right? Gu Xingyin looked at her impatiently. And you, An. Your mother is shameless to be the third party in other people's marriage. As a daughter, you have got the essence of her and come to steal my boyfriend. She took 2 steps toward An. under her aggressive momentum, and Wen couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Gu Xingyin saw this and stopped. However, and Wen, do you really think that Zhongqing will marry you in the future after being with you? Don't be too naive. Sometimes, a person should know her own identity. What the Zhong family needs is a daughter-in-law who can help their family to a higher level, not a... Gu Xingyin looked at her from head to toe and smiled ambiguously. You don't even know your father, a burden. And Wen's face turned pale. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Gu Xingyin. She stared at her and said, "Shut up. Zhong Yuji, shut up." The problem of her birth had always been her pain. She didn't know who her father was since she was a child. When she was a child, she also asked her mother and even resented her. But no matter what, she couldn't escape that she was born out of wedlock and didn't even have a father. Seeing her like this, Gu Xingyin really didn't continue. She turned her head to look at Zhongqing, who was standing motionlessly at the side, and sneered, "Look, this is the man you found. Even if I trample you to death here, believe it or not, he won't have the guts to come out and stop me." And Wen's mouth moved, but she couldn't refute. Yes, if she had a conflict with Zhong Yuji now, according to what Zhongqing said just now, it was hard to say who he would help. And Wen suddenly felt powerless. However, Gu Xingyin glanced at the two of them and said, "However, I'm in a good mood today. I wish you all the best. May you be infertile and have many children and grandchildren." After she finished speaking, she did not pay any attention to the 2 people behind her who were dumbstruck and resentful, and slowly left. No one noticed that in a car not far from here, someone had seen this scene from beginning to end. The man looked at the back of the leaving figure, and then looked at the 2 people who were standing there awkwardly. I remember that second brother seems to have a cooperation with the Zhong family. His face was hidden in the shadow, so it couldn't be seen clearly. But judging from the voice, the owner of the voice was very young. Another person in the car answered, "Yes, third master." He didn't speak again, and the black car left quietly. And Wen took the lead to break the silence between the 2 people. She thought for a while and felt that since she had offended Zhong Yuji, she couldn't leave Zhongqing behind. Chapter 1552. And Wen stammered as she looked at Zhongqing. Her eyes were filled with endless grievances. Zhongqing had been standing there in a daze. Only now did he come back to his senses. He looked at Wen, who was approaching him, and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back. The way he looked at Wen was as if he was looking at something dirty. "Don't come over." He looked at Wen with disgust. "Tell me, did you do it on purpose? Did you deliberately approach me to destroy the relationship between Yuji and me?" Zhongqing regretted it very much. If he had known earlier, he would have held back before Wen approached him. No matter what, he couldn't cause any trouble before he got married. He knew about the Chong family. Of course, he also knew about Wen's identity. Originally, he didn't like Wen at all in his heart, but this woman was sensible and had a gentle personality. She could satisfy his masculine desires very well. In this aspect, Zhong Yuji, who had always grown up like a rich young lady, couldn't compare. Therefore, Zhongqing thought that since Yuji didn't know, he would play with Wen. When they were about to get married, he would break up with her. However, he didn't know that there was a kind of woman who couldn't be broken up with when you wanted to. Moreover, Wen's purpose was not simply to be a mistress who couldn't see the light of day. Wen looked at Zhongqing in disbelief. It was as if at this moment, she really saw Zhongqing's true colors. Although she had some thoughts of seducing this man to get close to him. However, this kind of thing couldn't be done with a slap. When nothing happened, he was obedient to her. However, when Zhong Yuji came, he threw all the responsibility to her. Listening to the meaning of Zhongqing's words, he wanted to cut ties with her. How could there be such a beautiful thing in the world? Wen sneered in her heart, but on the surface, she pretended to be helpless. Tears rolled down from her pale face. Hearing Zhongqing's words, she couldn't help shaking her head. "No. It's not like that. I've never thought of coming between you and elder sister Yuji. And Wen cried and said, I know my identity and I know that it's impossible for me to marry you. I just want to stay by your side. Zhongcheng, I love you. Even if I don't have a status, I'm willing to be with you. Zhongcheng looked at Wen suspiciously, but he couldn't tell that she was lying. Such a delicate and pretty beauty was crying in front of him, yet she didn't forget to confess to him. No man would be able to harden his heart. Not to mention Zhongcheng, who had an ambiguous relationship with Wen. Zhongcheng's expression finally eased. However, he still said, let's not be together anymore. He looked at Wen's widened eyes and felt bad for her. However, when he thought about how Heavy Rain had left in a rage, he felt that he should know what was important. You know, I've loved Yuji for so many years, and I've always treated her as my future wife. I can't let go of her. And Wen was dumbfounded by these words. This man said that he was deeply in love with Heavy Rain, but behind her back, he kept having all kinds of lovers. Was this the so-called love? Although Wen hated Heavy Rain, at this moment, she actually had a trace of sympathy for her in her heart. Look, your boyfriend is such a scumbag. If Gu Xingyi knew her thoughts, she would definitely correct her. No, please pay attention to your words. That scumbag is not my boyfriend anymore. Don't push all the blame on me. Chapter 1553. Gu Xingyi wandered outside for a day. When she returned home, she found Zhongqing sitting on the sofa and chatting enthusiastically with Chongming. Chongming had a smile on his face. He was obviously very satisfied with Zhongcheng. Seeing Gu Xingyi return, Chongming acted as if nothing had happened in the morning. He said, You child, Zhongcheng is already here. Why didn't you come back earlier to accompany your boyfriend? Gu Xingyi glanced at Zhongcheng's face. It seemed that Zhongcheng didn't tell Chongming about that matter at all. She really didn't understand this man's thoughts. Could it be that he was so naive to think that there was still a possibility between them? Gu Xingyi looked at Yen, who was busy at the side. She poured herself a glass of water and said, I forgot to tell Dad that Zhongcheng and I broke up. When Chongming heard this, his smile disappeared. He frowned and said, What happened? He turned to look at Zhongcheng. Zhongcheng's expression was a little awkward. He said to Chongming, There's some misunderstanding between Yuji and me. Chongming wasn't stupid. Looking at this, he knew that something must have happened to Zhongcheng. However, he had always been quite satisfied with Zhongcheng, this prospective son-in-law. The Zhong family had a good background and had many collaborations with the Zhong family in some fields. If the two families could unite by marriage, it would be a good thing for both of them. Gu Xingyi slowly sat down on another sofa. Please pay attention to your words, Mr. Zhongcheng. There's no misunderstanding between us. I saw it clearly with my own eyes. Chongming felt that his daughter's attitude was a little aggressive. He said unhappily, Yuji, it's normal for young couples to have small problems. Look at Zhongcheng's good attitude. You should try to talk to him. There's nothing that can't be solved. Gu Xingyi placed the cup in her hand heavily on the glass coffee table. She looked at Chongming with a mocking expression. Father, aren't you going to ask me why I broke up with him? Or should I say that no matter what he did to me, as long as he is the young master of the Zhong family, I have to forgive him and then rob him of a happy marriage? She finally knew that there were some people that you didn't have to give them any face at all. Otherwise, they would really be able to whitewash the situation and pretend that nothing had happened. Chongming felt that his daughter had been going overboard recently. In the past, Yuji was not so rebellious. His face darkened. Is this how you talk to your father? Unfortunately, Gu Xingyi was not afraid of him at all. She smiled and said, Do you know what I saw when I went out to look for him today? She reached out and pointed at Zhongcheng. Zhongming looked at Zhongcheng suspiciously. He still understood his daughter. If it wasn't something that she couldn't tolerate, her reaction wouldn't be so big. Gu Xingyi's tone was nonchalant. My boyfriend and that woman, Wen, are locked in a kiss. Zhongcheng was completely embarrassed. He forced a smile and said, Yuji, we don't have to do this here. Please call me Miss Chong. Gu Xingyin interrupted him. Don't make it seem like we're very familiar with each other. Chong Minggang's face also turned green and white. If it was an ordinary affair, it would be fine, but the object of the affair was in one. Chapter 1554. Chong Minggang knew how much Gu Xingyin disliked the Yin family's mother and daughter. No wonder she had such a big reaction. This Zhong Cheng was really something. He clearly knew that An Wen was Yuji's sister in name, but he couldn't help but glare at Zhong Cheng. Zhong Cheng smiled bitterly. He knew that in this world, there was no father who could tolerate his daughter being treated like this. That was why he came early today, hoping to leave a good impression in Chong Minggang's heart. However, if Gu Xingyin didn't cooperate, nothing could be discussed. Gu Xingyin felt that this man was really despicable. She had already said it so clearly, but Zhong Cheng could still act like this. This man, didn't he know how to write the word shame? Taking a step back, even if Zhong Cheng was shameless and dared to appear in the Zhong family, Gu Xingyin didn't have the time to waste on him. She stood up directly. I'll say it again. You and I are over. There's no possibility. Don't come to the Zhong family anymore. I feel disgusted just looking at you. Zhong Cheng's expression became very ugly. He felt that he had already put down his face and dignity to beg Gu Xingyin for forgiveness. But this woman really didn't give him any face at all. She even embarrassed him in front of his uncle. Chong Minggang also felt that his daughter's words were a bit too much. Yuji. He shouted her name loudly, indicating for Gu Xingyin to restrain herself. Gu Xingyin ignored him and turned to look at Zhong Cheng. Do you find my words unpleasant? Then you have two choices. First, get lost from my side. I won't be able to see you, so I'll be in a good mood and won't scold you. Second, go find your gentle and one lover, right? For a woman like her, no matter what you do, she will still love you tenderly. She glanced at An Yen, who had been cleaning the stairs, and sneered. Mother and daughter are the same. They don't feel comfortable if they don't seduce other people's men. You. Chong Minggang was furious. He raised his hand high, as if he wanted to slap her. Gu Xingyin was not afraid at all. Father, you find my words unpleasant and want to teach me a lesson? I didn't say a single word of falsehood from beginning to end. How long had it been since his mother left and this woman had already entered the Zhong family? If you want to hit me, fine, hit me with all your might. I'm going to my uncle's house tomorrow. I'll let them see how you beat your own daughter for a shameless mistress and a wild child who seduced my boyfriend. Chong Minggang was so angry that his face turned green. He was so angry that he panted a few times before he said anxiously, Get out of here. Gu Xingyin left without another word. He really thought that she was willing to stay here. Zhong Cheng watched the entire show from beginning to end. Listening to Gu Xingyin's resentful words, he realized for the first time that Yuji had such a huge grudge against Madame and her daughter. In the past, Yuji would never say this in front of her boyfriend. He always thought that she simply hated them. Now, it seemed that it was more than hate. It was obvious that she hated them to the core. So, because he cheated on An Wen, Yuji had such a big reaction, right? If he stayed away from Madame and her daughter from now on, Yuji would see his true feelings. If Gu Xingyin knew what he was thinking, she would probably laugh countless times. Was this man so good at deceiving himself? Chapter 1555. Her words couldn't be any clearer. But Zhong Cheng was still able to find an excuse for himself. Of course, Zhong Cheng wouldn't let her go. Everyone knew that the head of the Zhong family, Zhong Minggang, was already in his 50s. He only had one daughter, Zhong Yuji. It was almost impossible for there to be any accidents. Everything in the Zhong family would be Zhong Yuji. If an ordinary person married her, they would have at least a few decades less to struggle. And Zhong Cheng, on the surface, was the only heir of the Zhong family, but his father had no less than 4 illegitimate children outside. Each and every one of them was very powerful. If he couldn't find a strong wife, his position as the heir of the Zhong family might not be stable. So even if he was a little shameless now, he had to try his best to coax Gu Xingyin back. But he underestimated Gu Xingyin, or rather, he underestimated women. Not all women were able to forgive their boyfriends for the sake of love after they cheated on them. This wasn't love, this was foolishness. Zhong Minggang looked at Zhong Cheng and felt a little uncomfortable. After all, he was disobeyed by his daughter just now. It was really embarrassing to be seen by an outsider. Zhong Cheng also felt that he had lost face in front of his future father-in-law and was now embarrassed. Then Uncle Zhong, I'll disturb you another day. Zhong Minggang regained the attitude of a kind elder and nodded at him. Yuji has been spoiled by me. It's inevitable that she has a bad temper. Please forgive her. Zhong Cheng hurriedly said no. The two of them exchanged a few words before Zhong Cheng left the Zhong family. After Zhong Cheng left, Zhong Minggang's face darkened. He waited for An Yen, who was standing by the stairs, and snorted coldly. Seducing her own sister's boyfriend. This is the good daughter you raised. Although Zhong Minggang contacted An Yen and her daughter, he knew the severity of the matter. He knew the identity of the An family's mother and daughter. It was fine if he brought them back and treated them better. But even if he and An Yen got together in the future and recognized An Wen as his daughter, An Wen could only be his recognized daughter. She could never be his daughter. Otherwise, he had no way to explain why An Wen was only a month younger than Yuji. An illegitimate daughter was a month younger than the legal wife. Everyone could guess the story behind this. If the Lu family found out that she had an affair with someone else before marriage, thinking about that family's usual style, Zhong Minggang's expression became even uglier. Not to mention, Lu Qinghe, who had passed away, owned nearly 30% of the shares of the Chong family. As for those shares, when she died, she left them all to her only daughter. Now, Zhong Yuji was the biggest shareholder of the Zhong family group. He only had 25%. If he fell out with Yuji, apart from his identity as a father, he didn't have any advantages at all. The more he thought about it, the more upset he felt. He couldn't do anything to Zhong Yuji, so he could only vent his dissatisfaction on An Yen. An Yen was now in her 40s, but she took good care of herself. All these years, Zhong Minggang had never mistreated her in terms of money, so she looked like she was in her 30s. When she heard Zhong Minggang's question, her heart ached. She was not without resentment. She followed Zhong Minggang when she was young. At that time, this man had said that he needed the power of the Lu family, so he had to marry Lu Qinghe, but he still loved her. When everything stabilized, he would divorce Lu Qinghe and marry her. Because of this sentence, she had waited for him for more than 20 years. Chapter 1556. She had been with this man for more than 20 years without any status. She had been looked at strangely by the people around her. Her daughter had cried and asked her why she didn't have a father when she was young. She had endured it. She had endured for more than half of her life, and finally, Lu Qinghe had died. She thought that she had finally seen the light, but she didn't expect that she had entered the Zhong family. But as a mistress who couldn't be seen by others. Her Wenwen had also entered the Zhong family, but she couldn't become Zhong Minggang's daughter. If this was the only result, why did she wait for more than 20 years? To put it bluntly, after more than 20 years, no matter how deep the feelings were, they were almost gone now. What An Yen wanted now was not the illusory and unreliable love. What she wanted was real, something that could bring her status, and benefits. But if she was in such an awkward situation now, if something happened to Zhong Minggang in the future, the Zhong family's property would completely belong to Zhong Yuji alone. It had nothing to do with her, a mistress with no status, and Wenwen, an outsider. How could An Yen accept such a result? At this moment, Zhong Minggang was angry in front of his daughter, but he vented all his anger on her. It wasn't the first time An Yen felt the difference in status. If she was Zhong Minggang's official wife, she would be able to use her words and actions to obtain the respect she deserved. But she wasn't. She was just a mistress with no status. She couldn't anger Zhong Minggang, because she might be kicked out of the house by the angry man. Once he reached such a state, he would truly have nothing left. So she could only endure and face the blame with a smile. And Yen told herself that she had endured for more than 20 years. Now that Lu Qinghe had died because of her, what else couldn't she endure? Zhong Yuji, so what if she was the eldest daughter of the Zhong family? She was just a young and aggressive girl. She was now using her status and Zhong Minggang's indulgence to throw a tantrum. When she became Zhong's wife. And Yan's eyes flashed with coldness. She had 100 ways to make her suffer without knowing what the problem was. Seeing in Yan's submissive manner, Zhong Minggang also realized that his tone wasn't very good. After all, she was a woman who had suffered outside for more than 20 years because of him. Moreover, Zhong Minggang still had some feelings for Yen. He pulled Yen up and said with a sigh, "Don't blame me. I was just angry. Tell me, Wen clearly knows that Zhong Cheng is Yuji's boyfriend. Why would she do such a thing?" And Yen knew that Zhong Cheng, the eldest son of the Zhong group, was a very rare rich husband. Her Wen couldn't even ask for a good marriage, but it was abandoned by heavy rain like a worn-out shoe. And Yen closed her eyes and leaned on Zhong Minggang. She said tentatively, "I think Mr. Zhong seems to like Wen. Since Yuji doesn't like her, how about..." There was a long silence. And Yen opened her eyes uneasily and met Zhong Minggang's inquisitive gaze. She forced a smile and said, "What's wrong, Minggang?" The smile on Zhong Minggang's face disappeared. He lowered his eyes. "And Yen, I remember telling you that even if I bring you and your daughter back, Wen and Yuji will still be different." Chapter 1557. And Yan's face was a little pale. But Zhong Minggang didn't pity her this time. Instead, he cruelly tore off the veil. "I can give Wen a good life, and even take her as my adopted daughter. But you have to know that she will never be the eldest daughter of the Zhong family." And Yen looked up, and tears fell from her eyes. This time, she wasn't pretending. "Why? Wen is also your daughter, isn't she?" she asked in a hoarse voice. Zhong Minggang looked away. "You should have known this since you started following me around 20 years ago when you didn't have a proper status. Yuji can choose not to marry the eldest son of the Zhong family. She is the eldest daughter of the Zhong family. Without Zhong Cheng, she can choose other rich young masters. But Yen..." Zhong Minggang said directly to Yen, "Wen can't. Even if Yuji doesn't want to be with Zhong Cheng, the Zhong family can't let their son marry an illegitimate daughter." Calling her an illegitimate daughter sounded good. And Wen's situation was even worse than an illegitimate daughter. In the eyes of others, she was just a burden brought by Yen. Neither of them noticed that at the entrance, Wen, who had just returned, was covering her mouth tightly and listening to their conversation with tears in her eyes. She originally thought that after she entered the Zhong family, her mother could become the madam of the Zhong family, and she could also become the eldest daughter of the Zhong family. So she wanted to be on the same level as Zhong Yuji. She even thought that Zhong Yuji was a brainless woman. She just had an extra noble birth. She never thought that she was worse than Zhong Yuji. Until now, her biological father directly told her mother that she could never be the real eldest daughter of the Zhong family in this life. She couldn't be compared to Zhong Yuji in this life. She didn't deserve any man that Zhong Yuji didn't want. And Wen didn't listen anymore. She turned around and ran out. That night, Zhong Minggang's 2 daughters didn't come home. However, their circumstances were completely different. Gu Xingyin said goodbye to her 2 good friends in the design studio, then decisively took her bag and went to her uncle's house. Anyway, the main force of that studio was Zhong Yuji's 2 friends who studied design. She was just the one who invested. On the other hand, Wen spent the entire night alone in the bar. Gu Xingyin's arrival was welcomed by her uncle's family. Zhong Yuji's grandfather, Lu Qingshan, had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Lu Qinghe was his youngest and only daughter. The entire Lu family spoiled Lu Qinghe so much that she had a character of not going back on her word. So, back then, Lu Qinghe didn't agree to her being with Chongming gang, but Lu Qinghe still insisted. The Lu family had no choice but to try their best to help their son-in-law with his career so that their daughter could live a better life. After his daughter passed away, his only granddaughter naturally became Lu Qingshan's treasure. "Grandpa's little you, what brings you here today?" Lu Qingshan, who was already in his 70s, asked with a smile while leaning on his walking stick. If it was the old Chong Yuji, in order not to let Grandpa and Uncle's family worry about her, she would keep it to herself. But she didn't know that her behavior made the Lu family feel that she had a good life at home. Although they were very dissatisfied with Chongming gang, they couldn't say anything for the sake of their granddaughter. Gu Xingyin wasn't the kind of person who would suffer losses silently. Chapter 1558. If she didn't show it in front of her family members who really cared about her, who would know? Therefore, as soon as her grandfather asked this, Gu Xingyin's eyes immediately turned red. She didn't cry, but this forced appearance of wanting to cry made people feel even more sorry for her. In particular, the Lu family had always known that Zhong Yuji's character was very strong. They had never seen her cry more than a few times since she was a child. "What's wrong with Yuji?" Before Lu Qingshan could speak, his eldest daughter-in-law, Zhong Yuji's eldest aunt, asked very sadly. Speaking of the Lu family, it was strange. Lu Qingshan's 3 sons were all born with boys. In the 3rd generation, there was not a single girl. Other families were worried about not having a male heir, but their family was the only one who wanted to give birth to a female child. But it was a pity that Lu Qingshan had no hope of having a granddaughter. He could only wait and see if he could look forward to having a great-granddaughter. Lu Qinghe was very homesick. When she was alive, she would bring Zhong Yuji back to the Lu family almost every month. Zhong Yuji's uncles and aunts could be said to have watched her grow up, so naturally, they felt very sorry for her. Gu Xingyin listened to her eldest aunt's words, and her heart ached. She slowly told her what had happened during this period of time. In particular, she mentioned that she heard her father say that An-wen was her biological daughter, and that An-wen and her boyfriend, Zhong Sheng, were together. After hearing the last part, the faces of several people in the living room turned cold. It's simply too much. Lu Qingshan slammed his crutch on the ground twice. His gaze turned to Gu Xingyin's face, and his anger turned into heartache. "You child, such a big thing. Why didn't you tell us?" Zhong Yuji lowered her head and covered her face. "I didn't know. I didn't want to trouble myself, and I didn't know what to do." Eldest aunt looked at her like this, and her heart ached. She walked over and gently hugged Gu Xingyin into her arms. "Don't be sad. Uncle, auntie, and grandfather all love you dearly. There's no need to mention that ungrateful father of yours." Eldest aunt's family was in the military, so her words and actions were much more straightforward than the average person. Lu Qingshan looked at his granddaughter's lowered head and was silent for a moment. He looked at his eldest son who was also angry. "Go, call your brothers back." He lived with his eldest son. His other 2 sons were in the capital, but they didn't live together. Gu Xingyin's uncle, Lu Jingzhang, knew that his father was really angry. Not to mention his father, even he wanted to rush to the Chong family and beat him up when he found out that Chongming gang was such a trash. He actually had a daughter before marrying her younger sister. He had pretended to be affectionate for more than 20 years, and everyone had been fooled by him. Lu Jingzhang felt a fire burning in his heart as he thought about it. This was too much. Without another word, he called his 2 younger brothers. He didn't say what the matter was. He just said that it was urgent and asked them to come back. Lu Qingshan started from scratch and built the huge Lu group alone. He retired at the age of 60 and handed the family business to his eldest son, Lu Jingzhang, and his second son, Lu Jinghui. His third son, Lu Jingqi, had no interest in business and chose to join the military. Now, he had made a name for himself. The people of the Lu family were not easy to bully. After receiving the call from their eldest brother, although they didn't know what had happened, the 2 brothers of the Lu family rushed back as soon as possible. Chapter 1559. The three brothers of the Lu family each had their own prospects. They were not at all like those other families, who fought to the death for the sake of property. When Lu Jinghui and Lu Jingxi came, they brought their wives because they didn't know what was going on. The two brothers arrived almost at the same time. "Big brother, what's the matter?" Third brother Lu Jingxi was a straightforward person. He asked as soon as he came in. Lu Jingzhang didn't say anything. It was Gu Xingyin's first aunt who told him what happened just now. Outrageous. Lu Jingxi's face was livid. When little sister chose Chong Minggang, I didn't agree. That guy was scheming, but Qing had just had to jump into his trap. Someone bumped into his elbow. He turned around and found that it was his wife. Gu Xingyin's third aunt looked at her husband with disappointment. Her niece was still here? How could he scold her father in front of others? Lu Jingxi was used to being reckless outside. He was a henpecked husband. He really touched his nose and didn't say anything. Lu Qingshan saw that the whole family was here. He then looked at Gu Xingyin. "Yuji, no matter what happens today, your three uncles and I will definitely stand up for you. The people of our Lu family cannot be casually bullied by others." But he looked at Gu Xingyin. "There's something you need to decide." Gu Xingyin looked up. The corners of her eyes were a little red. "Please say it." Lu Qingshan's voice was very steady. "The key is, what kind of result do you want? Did he just want to chase out the restless mother and daughter? Or do you want to get rid of all the threats in the future?" Gu Xingyin was shocked. She didn't expect that her grandfather would plan so deeply for her. She asked in a hoarse voice, "The latter." "What do you mean?" Lu Qingshan's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but feel satisfied. His grandson's character was very strong. Thinking of his son-in-law who was always respectful to him, a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. "Get rid of all the threats. That is, naturally, to let your father retire at home in peace." His words were vague, but everyone present understood what he meant. He wanted to remove Chong Minggang's influence in the Chong group and cut off his power. After all, Zhong Yuji held the most shares in Chong's group. She might be weak by herself, but if she had the support of the Lu family, it would not be difficult for her to go against Zhong Minggang. The Lu family had helped the Chong family to rise because of Lu Qinghe. Now, they could take the Chong group back from Chong Minggang for Chong Yuji. Gu Xingyin was silent for a long time before she nodded gently. Lu Qingshan's eyes flashed with praise, but he asked, "Have you thought it through? If you want the second option, then your father-daughter relationship with Chong Minggang will be completely gone." Gu Xingyin's lips curled into a helpless smile. "Given my father's current state, if I were to force An and her mother away, would there still be any affection left between us? No, I don't know how much father-daughter relationship there is between my father and me." Several people in the Lu family thought of the existence of An and her mother, and they couldn't help but be silent. Yes, a man who had a true love soon after he got married, how much sincerity could he have for his wife and child? Chapter 1560. In the end, Lu Qingshan made a decision. "All right, since it's the latter, we need to make some preparations. Yuji, you can stay at home for the time being. It's fine if you don't go back to the Zhong family." Gu Xingyin nodded. That was exactly what she was thinking. When she went back, she would have to see the mother and daughter's pretentious faces. It was simply unbearable. The Lu family was very good to her. Why should she go back and look for trouble? That night, Gu Xingyin slept very comfortably. When she woke up the next morning, she saw 2 missed calls on her phone. It was from Zhong Minggang. Gu Xingyin glanced at it casually and didn't plan to pick it up. But just as she was about to go out, her phone rang again. She picked it up. "Hello?" Zhong Minggang's angry voice came through. "Where did you go? Why didn't you tell me you were coming back?" Gu Xingyin sneered. "Didn't you tell me to get lost? I'm at Grandpa's house now. I don't plan to go back for the time being." After saying that, she hung up and set the phone to silent mode. Zhong Minggang heard the busy tone on the other side and was so angry that he almost threw the phone in his hand. He looked at Wen on the sofa. This woman was drunk. Not only did she reek of alcohol, but her clothes were also torn. A string of red marks could be seen from her neck to her collarbone. One could imagine how intense the battle last night was. Zhong Minggang was about to go to work early in the morning when he saw Wen like this outside the door. God knows how much he wanted to throw this woman out in an instant. She went out alone in the middle of the night, drunk, and had a one-night stand with someone else. Was this something that his daughter could do? No girl with self-respect would do such a thing. Zhong Minggang immediately thought of his eldest daughter who also didn't come back for the night. He was more worried about this. And Wen was fine. She was an illegitimate daughter anyway. Not many people knew about it. But Zhong Yuji was different. If Zhong Yuji did such a thing and was photographed, the Zhong family's reputation would be ruined. Therefore, he immediately called Gu Xingyin. When he heard Gu Xingyin say that she was in the Lu family, his first reaction was to heave a sigh of relief. His second reaction was displeasure. Just like all successful men who relied on their wives to get to where they were, Zhong Minggang was a little dissatisfied with his in-laws. It was a taboo for his business rivals to say that he relied on women to get to where he was today. His unhappiness reached its peak after Gu Xingyin hung up on him. He wanted to scold his increasingly rude daughter, but Gu Xingyin didn't give him the chance. Therefore, Chongming held back his anger and became even more dissatisfied when he saw Wen lying drunk on the sofa. Just as Yen came downstairs, Chongming found a way to vent his anger. Look at your daughter. What kind of bad habits did she pick up outside? Don't you know how to educate people? And Yen woke up early in the morning to be scolded like this. By the time she reacted, Chongming had already driven out. And Yen hurried to her daughter's side. She knew what happened when she saw her daughter's expression. She was anxious and angry, but she couldn't do anything. Madam, your breakfast is on the table. A servant reminded her. And Yen felt that those servants must be laughing at her behind her back at this moment. Chapter 1561. She always had a gentle look on her face, but the servants did not treat her very intimately because of that. Now she was angry and anxious, and there was a trace of inferiority in her heart. She blurted out, "Shut up. Can't I see it myself?" The servant glanced at her but didn't say anything. She just left silently. And Yen was scolded early in the morning and saw her daughter like this. How could she be in the mood to eat? She did not let the servants help her. She helped her daughter to the bedroom on the second floor with some difficulty. It wasn't until her figure had left that the servants in the house began to chat. "Sisterly, don't take it to heart. People like her." One of them quietly comforted Sisterly, who had just been scolded. They were all hired by Lu Qinghe when she was still here. They had been here for many years, and they had watched Zhong Yuji grow up. Not long after the mistress of the house left, Mr. Zhong brought this person in. He also brought a girl who was about the same age as Misson. These aunties, who were familiar with all kinds of melodramatic plots of rich families, immediately imagined a love and hate story. In people's hearts, there was a distinction between close and distant. On this point, the mother and daughter of the Yin family suffered a loss. Not to mention that the two of them had such a shady identity. Although these servants did not say anything on the surface, they could not get close to the two of them in their hearts. If Yen could always maintain her gentle image, it would be fine. Now, she could not pretend anymore and threw a tantrum. These servants naturally despised her. Sisterly shook her head gently. She is just a woman who has no status with Mr. Zhong. Does she really think she is Mrs. Zhong? Miss is still here. And after so long, Mr. Zhong has never said anything about giving her a status. She really has the face to put on airs? When Sisterly said this, the others also covered their mouths and laughed. That was indeed the case. Miss was here. If the mother and daughter wanted to make trouble, it would depend on Mrs. permission. Sisterly thought of Wen's appearance just now and could not help but look at her with disdain. Did you see Miss Anne's appearance just now? I saw hickeys on her neck, and she reeked of alcohol. I remember that she did not have a boyfriend. Another person also interrupted. If my daughter dares to do this, I will break her legs. After chatting for a while, they went their separate ways. Gu Xingyin finished breakfast with her grandfather and the others. Since she had nothing to do, she took the Wolf King out for a walk. The Wolf King was not a wolf, but a big, majestic dog. When the Wolf King stood up, it was as tall as Gu Xingyin's chest. Its eyes were fierce and its teeth were sharp. It was said that it had the bloodline of a wolf. If it was brought out, it could easily scare a group of children to tears. However, the Wolf King liked Gu Xingyin very much. When it was held by Gu Xingyin, it was obedient and not irritable at all. Gu Xingyin was led around by the Wolf King. When they passed through a small path, the Wolf King suddenly became agitated. It lowered its body and whimpered in a certain direction. Obviously, it was facing an enemy. At the same time, the sound of dogs barking could be heard from the other side. Gu Xingyin looked over and saw a figure who was also leading a dog. Looking at the dog, Gu Xingyin finally understood why the Wolf King had such a reaction. A Tibetan Mastiff. Chapter 1562. Tibetan Mastiffs and Wolfhounds were the most ferocious of the canine species, and they were naturally aggressive. Gu Xingyin felt the Wolf King's restlessness and patted its head helplessly. Don't make a fuss. If you scare people, I won't bring you out next time. He Lu also heard what was going on here. If you bark again, you won't have meat for dinner. His threat was very simple and crude. But it was this simple and crude that made the big guy under him obediently listen. It put away its teeth and began to dig the ground gloomily. He Lu glanced at him and didn't say anything. He turned to look at the woman who was leading the wolfhound not far away. If his memory wasn't messed up, he should have seen her a few days ago. In another place, this woman seemed to have been cheated on, but the way she shook off the scumbag was very handsome. While He Lu was thinking, Gu Xingyin had already walked towards him. Obviously, her target was him. Hello. Gu Xingyin stood at least 3 meters away from him and greeted him with a light smile. He Lu wasn't good at getting along with women, especially unfamiliar women. He nodded his head in acknowledgement. The Tibetan Mastiff under him started to bark again because of the wolfhound's approach. He Lu pulled it twice, but it didn't listen to him. If the two of them could understand animal language, they would probably have heard the Tibetan Mastiff excitedly declaring war on the Wolf King. But obviously, the Wolf King, who listened to Gu Xingyin, didn't care about it at all. Gu Xingyin looked at the struggling Tibetan Mastiff and suddenly said, "Can I touch it?" He Lu subconsciously said, "She has a bad personality and doesn't let others touch her easily." He was a little annoyed after saying that. If an ordinary person heard such words, they would think that he was rejecting her. Unexpectedly, Gu Xingyin smiled mysteriously. "Don't worry, I have a good relationship with animals." Wasn't it very good? Gu Xingyin didn't know how many times she had received this aura purification skill. Because of the purity of the aura, animals and plants liked it. She didn't have anything to say about such a skill. The system said, "What can I do?" This was all chosen by the host. Most importantly, this was an alien monster that the system had gotten for the host. If it were someone else, they wouldn't have gotten it. Of course, the system kept the rest to itself and did not tell Gu Xingyin. He Lu saw that she was really interested. He didn't know why, but he didn't want to reject her at all. If it were someone else, he would definitely not want to bother with them. But this girl's request, he only hesitated for a moment before saying, "You should greet the lion first. If it likes you, it will react." After saying this, even He Lu himself found it novel. He actually had the patience to instruct a stranger about such things. Gu Xingyin smiled and asked, "It's called a lion?" He Lu nodded. Gu Xingyin squatted down and waved at the lion lying on the ground. "Hello, lion." The lion looked at the human in front of it, opened its mouth and whimpered twice. Its claws also moved forward. Gu Xingyin laughed. It seems to like me. He Lu felt that it was a little inconceivable. He knew the lion's temper best. It was extremely arrogant. Usually, even bathing and feeding it had to be done by itself. It wouldn't let the servants get close at all. It actually had a good impression of a stranger. Chapter 1563. He Lu became more curious about the girl who was squatting on the ground. When Gu Xingyin saw the lion's furry ears, she couldn't help but like it. She reached out and rubbed it. The lion, who had always been grumpy, was not angry. It still let her play with it. He Lu was very curious about all this. He looked at the wolf king beside Gu Xingyin, who seemed a little unhappy about being ignored. He couldn't help but say, I rarely see girls like lions, which are more fierce dogs. In fact, he only knew a few cousins who liked cute pets like golden-haired teddy bears. Gu Xingyin shook her head and said, I didn't raise the wolf king. I don't have time to take care of such a big one. She looked up and smiled at him. Maybe it's fate. Not only dogs, but animals also like me. He Lu looked at her smile and his heart skipped a beat. But he looked at the time and said regretfully, I have something to do, so I'll go home first. Gu Xingyin nodded and stood up. Goodbye. She didn't ask for any contact information. He Lu liked such a straightforward attitude the most. This time, he didn't know why, but he felt a little upset. Maybe it was because he hadn't been treated so coldly by a woman for a long time. He Lu shook his head with a smile. There was a serious goodbye in his ear. Goodbye, lion. The Tibetan mastiff beside him heard the voice and turned around to smile at him. It seemed that it would abandon its master at any moment. He Lu turned around and saw the girl in white casual clothes opposite him waving at the Tibetan mastiff with a smile, as if the lion could understand her. However, judging from the lion's reaction, it really seemed that it could understand her. He Lu turned around and left with the lion, who was still reluctant to part with him. Gu Xingyin continued to walk around with the wolf king before returning home. Lu Qingshan was now idle at home. Every day, he played chess and planted flowers. Occasionally, he went out for a walk with his old friends. His life was very leisurely. Seeing Gu Xingyin coming back with the wolf king, he couldn't bear to look at her. Yuji, you're such a delicate little girl. It's so nice to buy a kitten or a rabbit to raise, but you're holding the wolf king. Ever since Lu Qingshan was young, he had always wanted a well-behaved, quiet, and delicate daughter. However, when Lu Qinghe was born, he was busy with his career. By the time her career had stabilized, her daughter had already been spoiled by her family. Not to mention being delicate and lovable, Lu Qinghe could even use a fulcrum to move the earth. Later, when his daughter failed, he placed his hopes on his granddaughter. In the end, looking at the wolfhound that was even taller than his granddaughter when it stood up, Lu Qingshan thought that he could only place his hopes on his great-granddaughter. Gu Xingyin smiled. I'm not raising it. I'm just going out for a walk with the wolf king. Right. She asked casually, I just met a man with a Tibetan mastiff on the road. He looks quite handsome. Grandpa, do you know who he is? As soon as he heard the words Tibetan mastiff, Lu Qingshan's first reaction was that his granddaughter was not injured, right? After Gu Xingyin confirmed that she was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, there's only one person who can raise a Tibetan mastiff here. He Lu, the third master of the He family. Gu Xingyin's eyes narrowed. Could it be that He family? If it was true, then it would be terrible. Lu Qingshan was very satisfied with his granddaughter's reaction. It's that He family. Chapter 1564. There were many families with the surname He in Hua Nation. However, if one were to talk about the most famous He family, many people would know that the He family referred to the He family in the capital. The ancestors of the He family in the capital had followed Taizu to conquer the world and had made great achievements. Their descendants had also lived up to their name. The He family's main base was in the military. Coincidentally, there would be a genius in the military in every generation of the He family. No clan could guarantee that every generation of descendants would be outstanding, but for a clan like the He clan, As long as there were 1 or 2 outstanding descendants in every generation, with their foundation and connections, this clan would not fall. Moreover, there were more than 1 or 2 outstanding members in this generation of the He family. Apart from those with average talents, there were 3 masters in this generation of the He family. Although they were called masters, the oldest of the 3 was only in his 40s. The youngest, 3rd master, was not even old enough to stand up. First master, He Ji, was a figure that could be seen almost every day on Hua Nation TV. He was the youngest minister in the country and had a bright future in the political arena. He even had a chance to compete for the highest position. Second master, He Chi, was a famous figure in Hua Nation and even the world. He owned a Wuxia corporation and had branches all over Asia, Africa, and Europe. He was on the top of the Forbes rich list every year. Third master, He Lu. He was the youngest person in the military to hold the rank of Major General in Hua Nation. He had been promoted to Major General at the age of 27. He had not relied on his family's influence, but on his own abilities. He had earned it step by step. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that He Lu's future would not stop there based on his age and family background. Therefore, some people said that even if the most prominent family in Hua Nation was not the He family at the moment, it would definitely be the He family in the future. The first and second master of the He family were already married. Third master, He Lu, was the only one left. Countless families in the capital wanted to be on good terms with him. However, after so many years, no one had heard of He Lu being close to any family's daughter. Lu Qingshan was shocked when he heard He Lu's name. He had heard rumors that He Lu did not get close to women. Moreover, not only did he not get close to women, but he was also very cold in his dealings with others. The Lu family had lived here for so many years, and it was rare to see He Lu's smiling face. Is Yuji alright? Lu Qingshan couldn't help but ask again. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. How scary was He Lu in Grandpa's heart? She shook her head. I'm fine. I didn't say anything to Third Master He. I just greeted the Tibetan mastiff called Lion. Lu Qingshan knew that his granddaughter was close to animals. He looked at his granddaughter, who was smiling without a trace of nervousness. Although he knew in his heart that the other party wasn't a girl who coveted power, he still couldn't help but advise her, that Third Master He, it's best if we don't get too close. Gu Xingyin seemed a little confused as to why he would say such a thing. Lu Qingshan said, a family like ours, in the eyes of ordinary people, is considered a high and mighty rich family. But in front of a real rich family like the He family, it's still not enough. Grandpa is afraid that you will be taken advantage of. Gu Xingyin glanced at Lu Qingshan and suddenly smiled. Grandpa, don't worry. I won't covet anything that doesn't belong to me. Chapter 1565. Hearing this, Lu Qingshan also relaxed. But she didn't know that Gu Xingyin still had half a sentence hidden in her heart. She naturally wouldn't think about someone who didn't belong to her. But what if that man was born to belong to her? Gu Xingyin shook her head. There were some things that others couldn't know. He Lu also returned home. This wasn't where he lived. This was a rare vacation, so his second brother, who had already married, invited his younger brother to stay for a while. As a successful businessman, He Chi was best at reading people's expressions. He glanced at He Lu and knew that his younger brother was in a good mood. Did something good happen when you went out? He Chi asked with a smile. He Lu's second sister-in-law came out with a bowl of fruit. Hearing this, she glanced at her younger brother-in-law's expressionless face. Sometimes, she really admired her husband. Her younger brother-in-law's calm face could tell whether he was happy or unhappy. But she didn't doubt He Chi's eyes. Sure enough, the next moment, He Lu nodded and said, I just met an interesting person. Hearing this, He Chi became spirited. Interesting person? There weren't many people who could interest his younger brother. Man or woman? He Chi asked. Gu Xingyin's bright face flashed in front of He Lu's eyes. He said, woman. He Chi's eyes lit up. Speaking of which, the He family married late. His family wasn't particularly worried about He Lu not having a family even though he was almost 30 years old. Especially with He Lu's conditions. As long as he opened his mouth, who knew how many young ladies in the capital would fight to enter the He family. But the key point was, after so many years, he had never seen He Lu treat anyone with a pleasant expression. Not to mention being interested, other than his family and friends from childhood, there wasn't even a girl who was slightly close to He Lu. He Chi even secretly thought that He Lu didn't like boys, right? But later, he didn't worry about this. Because not only were there no girls by He Lu's side, there were also no men. He Chi didn't have time to think about these things in the past, but in recent years, his career had been successful, his family was harmonious, and his wife had given him an adorable and invincible daughter. Second Master He, who felt that his life was complete, began to worry about his younger brother's lifelong affairs. After all, the old man at home was open-minded and felt that his children and grandchildren had their own blessings. As for her eldest brother, he was so engrossed in his career that he couldn't even take care of his own family matters. From this, He Chi developed a sense of responsibility as an elder brother who was like a father. He Lu was in the army and didn't have much time off. However, there were so many men in the He family and he had been close to He Chi since he was young. Every time she came back from her vacation, she would spend most of her time at her second brother's place, other than going to the old house to visit the old master. He Chi seized this opportunity and often took He Lu out in the name of meeting a few friends when he returned home. He Lu didn't want to embarrass his second brother, so he agreed every time. But every time, He Lu would be able to see a few young ladies of similar age and family background among those so-called friends. He Lu wasn't an idiot. How could he not understand when he saw this situation? So once, when the two brothers returned home from a party, he directly told He Chi that he had no interest in this kind of blind date. If He Chi was like this again, he wouldn't come again. He Chi naturally wouldn't distance himself from his younger brother because of this. He agreed on the surface, but his heart became more anxious. Chapter 1566. After confirming that his younger brother wasn't interested in men and women, He Chi had a new worry. Could it be that this younger brother had something, that he couldn't say? Thinking of this possibility, He Chi felt that his whole body was unwell. But he couldn't say this to He Lu directly. He could discuss it with his wife, but He Chi also felt that he was crazy to think of this. His wife would probably scold him. This time, he finally heard about girls from He Lu's mouth. How could he not be excited? So he quickly asked, "Whose daughter is it? Do you know her? How old is she?" He Lu glanced at He Chi and said helplessly, "I just met her on the road and said a few words. How would I know whose family she is from?" In fact, Gu Xingyin's identity wasn't difficult to find out. This area was a famous rich area in the capital. Money wasn't enough. You had to have some connections to buy this area. With He Chi's connections, he probably knew which building belonged to which family. What's more, it wasn't rare to see such a large wolfhound. But He Lu didn't want to talk about this. He said that they met by chance, but He Chi didn't think so. With He Lu's perfect 1.8m figure and handsome face that could be compared to a big-screen superstar, even if they didn't know his identity, there were still many girls who came to talk to him. There were even some with hot personalities who directly hinted at him. But He Chi had never heard anything about strange women from He Lu's mouth. This time, he didn't just talk. He was obviously in a good mood. He even said that she was interesting. He Chi, who was a playboy before marriage, said that a man's love for a woman often started from interest. Not to mention He Lu, who was never interested in people. His eyes were burning. He wanted to know more about it, but He Lu wasn't willing to cooperate. He also knew what He Chi was thinking. In his heart, there was only helplessness. "I say, brother, I really don't have any interest in dating or marriage. Don't be so surprised." At this time, He Lu didn't think that he would be slapped in the face so quickly. He Chi saw that He Lu didn't speak and understood his brother's character. If he didn't want to say it, no one could pry it out of his mouth. But even if He Lu didn't say anything, it didn't mean that He Chi didn't know. This time, it was rare for He Lu to have a long vacation. The next day, he was called out to a gathering by his best friends who had grown up with him. He Chi also found someone to find out who the girl he met at He Lu was. So it's the granddaughter of the Lu clan and the daughter of the Zhong clan. Both families were well known in the capital. He Chi knew Gu Xingyin's identity at a glance. This information was very detailed. It even found out that the Zhong family and the Zhong family had always intended to form a marriage alliance. Naturally, it also dug out the Zhong family's dirty secrets. However, He Chi's focus was not on this. He looked at the information that showed that Zhong Yuji's boyfriend was Zhong Cheng. Just a few days ago, the two of them broke up. Just a few days ago, He Lu told He Chi that he would terminate his cooperation with the Zhong family. The cooperation between He Chi and the Zhong family was just a small project. There were many competing companies, and all of them were about the same. He Chi had chosen the Zhong family at random. Of course, he didn't mind this kind of thing. What he was more curious about was why He Lu, who had never cared about these things, would suddenly say this. Chapter 1567. He Chi had asked this question before, but how did He Lu answer? It seemed like he just mentioned it casually, and He Chi didn't care. But now, it was different. Looking at the information about Zhong Cheng's cheating sister, He Chi immediately thought of his younger brother's anger for a woman. He looked and couldn't help but laugh. You still said that you met by chance? Brat, I can't beat you in a fight, but in terms of love, 10 of you, He Lu, can't compare to me. He looked carefully at Gu Xingyin's information again. Her family background is good, and her character is not stained. She is a good match for third brother. Gu Xingyin still didn't know that she had been labeled as a future sister-in-law in the He family's second master's heart. Her life in the Lu family was very comfortable. Even the air was much fresher without the extreme father and White Lotus. But she wasn't in a hurry, but Zhong Minggang was. It was a lie to say that he didn't have feelings for Zhong Yuji. After all, she was the daughter he doted on for more than 20 years. After a long time, he could even have feelings for an animal, let alone a human. Even though Gu Xingyin said that Zhong Minggang was a scumbag of a father, it couldn't be denied that Zhong Yuji received a lot of love from her father in the first 20 years of her life. But this kind of love was limited. When Zhong Minggang doted on Zhong Yuji, he took out the same amount of fatherly love, even more, to dote on an illegitimate daughter that was born outside. Zhong Minggang felt that his eldest daughter, Zhong Yuji, was born to be the high and mighty eldest daughter of the Zhong family. She had him, her mother, and her grandfather's family to dote on her. She didn't lack anything. But his youngest daughter, An, was different. She needed more love from her father. It was fine if she didn't know about this kind of thing, but Gu Xingyin knew it clearly. Especially, Gu Xingyin, who had read the plot, knew that every time Zhong Minggang went on a business trip, he brought her those small gifts. They weren't unique. He didn't forget to give his sister the same gift every time. It wasn't just that. Zhong Minggang was an extremely selfish person. It could be seen from the fact that he chose Lu Qinghe for power and wealth even though he clearly had true love, but he couldn't let go of true love and let An Yen follow him for the rest of his life without any title or share. The person he loved the most was still himself. Just like now, he called Gu Xingyin several times in a row, not because he missed his daughter very much, but because he was worried that his daughter would be closer to the Lu family. Towards this powerful Yu clan, Zhong Minggang's heart had always been fearful and dissatisfied. The Lu family's way of doing things was too tough. He felt that he had been living under the shadow of the Lu family for many years. However, his daughter was very close to the Lu family. This was what Zhong Minggang was most worried about. His daughter Zhong Yuji held 30% of the shares of the Zhong family. Such a huge share, if Zhong Yuji turned against him, he would not be able to take advantage of it. If it was just his daughter alone, he wouldn't be worried at all. How could a young person who had just left school and didn't know anything about the business world have any ability? He was worried that the Lu family would interfere. Zhong Minggang always felt that the Lu family had always been coveting the Zhong group. If they used some underhanded means to take the shares from his daughter, and then used the Lu family's power to make things difficult for the Chong family, thinking about this possibility, Chong Minggang felt a chill run down his spine. So he couldn't wait for Gu Xingyin to hurry home. Chapter 1568. Gu Xingyin really wanted to hang up the phone. She didn't want to listen to this man's fake sincerity at all. If it was the real Zhong Yuji, she might be soft-hearted because of this. But Gu Xingyin was different. She had seen too much of the fickleness of human nature. It was easy to tell if a person was sincere or not. Zhong Minggang was so nice to her. He obviously had other intentions. Her eldest aunt stopped her. She asked Gu Xingyin to say a few perfunctory words to appease Gu Xingyin. Then, her eldest aunt pulled her to sit down. Yuji, Zhong Minggang wants to take you back. Gu Xingyin nodded. Her eldest aunt smiled. Her eyes were gentle. Then you can go back. Gu Xingyin looked reluctant. I don't like to go home. Now when I see some people, I can't help but want to tear them apart. Her eldest aunt patted her hand and said seriously, if you don't like them, just drive them away. She looked at Gu Xingyin. Yuji, you have to remember that you are the daughter of the Zhong family. You are the miss of the Zhong family. That is your home. You are the miss of the Zhong family. You are living outside and letting an illegitimate daughter and a mistress take over your home. What is this? For some things, as time passes, even the false will become the real thing. The Yin family has been living in the Zhong family for a long time. Those who don't know the truth will think that they are the real madam and miss of the Zhong family. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. She looked at her eldest aunt. But aren't we going to? What she wanted to say was, didn't they already say that they were going to take over the Zhong group? Her eldest aunt glared at her. So what if you take over the Zhong group? Can you not recognize Zhong Minggang as your father? Can you not let him live in the Zhong family's house? And when that time comes, you will fall out with him. He will only protect the mother and daughter even more and let them continue to live in the house that you and your mother used to live in. Are you willing? Gu Xingyin was suddenly enlightened. She nodded at first aunt. Then I'll talk to my dad later and ask him to drive the Yin family's mother and daughter out. Gu Xingyin said. Eldest aunt shook her head. It's not appropriate for you to say that. Let us do it. Gu Xingyin was surprised. First aunt, actually, how could she not know that these words were more appropriate to be said by her maternal grandparents? It was just that this kind of thing was definitely a thankless task to offend someone. The Lu family treated her very well, so how could she have the nerve to ask? She shook her head. This matter is too troublesome. It's better if I do it myself, eldest aunt interrupted her. You're being so estranged. Are you not going to treat us as family? In my opinion, there's no need to offend anyone. Ever since that bastard Zhong Minggang did such a wicked thing, our Lu family no longer has any friendship with him, only hatred. Since we're already enemies, there's no need to talk about offending them. As for the Yin family's mother and daughter, eldest aunt's face was full of disdain. Our Lu family, do you think we're afraid of these two trash who live by seducing men? Eldest aunt was also a swift and decisive person. If she said she would do it, she would do it. She immediately called Zhong Minggang. The meaning behind her words was very obvious. You want Yuji to go back? Fine. Chase that restless mother and daughter out. Zhong Minggang was immediately furious. The Lu family was really too arrogant. Lu Qinghe was already dead, but they still wanted to interfere in his private affairs. He asked Gu Xingyin to answer the phone, but his daughter's phone was always busy, and the Lu family did not relent. This kind of situation made Zhong Minggang even more certain of his guess. The Lu family must have a conspiracy to detain Yuji. Chapter 1569. He didn't even think that the Lu family kept their daughter because they liked Gu Xingyin. He even thought that the Lu family was using this opportunity to put their daughter under house arrest. As for what they wanted to do after putting their daughter under house arrest, the more he thought about it, the more Zhong Minggang felt that his guess was right. The Lu family was definitely ambitious. But to chase An and her daughter out, Chongming Gang couldn't bear to do that. Not bearing to do that was only one aspect. More importantly, it was about a man's pride. What right did the Lu family have to order him around? Gu Xingyin listened from the side. It seemed that Chongming Gang wasn't willing to compromise. Eldest aunt's expression was getting worse. Gu Xingyin's eldest aunt really didn't understand Chongming Gang. She was just a mistress. Was she more important than her own daughter? Even though she knew that Chongming Gang was a scumbag, eldest aunt still felt her heart ache when she really met him. At this moment, she saw Gu Xingyin secretly mouthing, "Let him do a paternity test with An." Eldest aunt narrowed her eyes. Although she didn't know what Gu Xingyin meant, she immediately changed her words. "It's fine if you don't chase them out for now. Take that cheap daughter of yours to do a paternity test. Bring the results to the Lu family." After saying this, eldest aunt didn't seem to want to hear Chongming Gang's voice anymore. She hung up the phone with a bang. She asked Gu Xingyin, "Why did you suddenly think of this?" After all, she was someone who had experienced many things. After she asked, eldest aunt reacted. "That An is your father's daughter?" She thought about that daughter's age and compared it to Chongming Gang. Her face darkened even more. If it was true, then Chongming Gang was really a scumbag. Gu Xingyin knew that An wasn't, but she couldn't say this to eldest aunt. So she just shook her head and said that she didn't know either. But looking at her father's attitude towards An, she felt that he treated her better than he did her. It was as if he was compensating her. That was all he needed to say. Sure enough, eldest aunt was so angry that she wanted to discuss it with her father-in-law and husband, but Gu Xingyin stopped her. "There's still no news about it. Why don't we wait for my dad to come back with the results?" Eldest aunt thought about it and agreed. She patted Gu Xingyin's hand and said, "Yuji is so thoughtful. Eldest aunt is so angry." At the other side, just as Chongming thought about the Lu family's words, he fell into deep thought. Could it be that the Lu family was suspicious of Anwen's identity when they said they wanted to do a paternity test? No way. She couldn't let them know that An was her child. If that was the case, she would be the one in the wrong if she had already had an affair when she first got married. But if he didn't take it out, he would seem guilty. Halcyon thought for a moment, then called an old friend of his. A paternity test wasn't completely real, was it? Chongming Gang didn't tell An and his daughter about this, afraid that they would think too much. The next day, when he went to work, he took a few strands of Anwen's hair and went to his old friend's place. "Help me do a paternity test." I might have to trouble you to help me change it." "Okay." After Chongming Gang sent the thing over, his heart calmed down. As long as he took this to the Lu family, no matter how suspicious the Lu family was, they wouldn't say anything, right? Chapter 1570. Gu Xingyin naturally paid attention to Chongming Gang's actions. Of course, Anwen's actions were also under her control. She saw Chongming Gang calling an old acquaintance and making an appointment with him to help her fake it. When she saw this, she almost laughed out loud. She didn't know how interesting her scumbag father's expression would be at that time. As for An, her life was very carefree. Her life wasn't bad before. After all, Chongming Gang would give An a sum of money regularly. It was more than enough to support the mother and daughter. But there was still a big difference between living a good life and being rich. At least in Anwen's opinion, compared to now, the life she lived before wasn't called living, but survival. Now, she could go to all the big brands and swipe her card. She didn't even need to look at the price. If it was before, she had to save money to buy a 4-figure dress. And Yen wasn't as happy as her daughter. She even often advised her daughter, "You should restrain yourself." Now, nothing is settled. The Chong family only has Chong Yuji. We have to leave a good impression in front of your father. Anwen didn't care about this at all. In her heart, now that Chong Yuji was forced out of the Chong family by them, they were the mistresses of the Chong family. What else did they have to worry about? But she didn't know if Yan's worry was really unnecessary. Chong Mingang was originally a little dissatisfied with this daughter because of the one-night stand in the bar. And during this period, Wen's crazy shopping behavior made him a little dissatisfied. It wasn't that he was in the mood for the money that was spent. He could still afford such expenses. He just felt that Wen's behavior was like a nouveau riche. She didn't have the temperament of a rich girl at all. After all, she was raised by Yan, a woman who didn't know much. Whether it was vision or temperament, she wasn't very good. There was a gap only when there was a comparison. Thinking about it this way, although Yuji was spoiled and had a bad temper, at least she wouldn't be embarrassed when brought out. Chong Mingang had a rare trace of satisfaction with Chong Yuji. Because he got in through the back door, the test results came out quickly. He was in a meeting when he received the call from his old friend. Because he didn't take it seriously, he casually said that he would come back at night and treat him to dinner. After work, Chongming drove to his old friend's private hospital. In the end, when the other party handed over the report, he casually glanced at it and smiled. "You know me well, kid. I didn't even tell you how to change it, and you changed it for me." The results of this report clearly showed that there was no parent-child relationship between the two. Chong Mingang was still thinking that his old friend was really good at saving him a lot of time. He had to give him a big red packet later. Hearing this, his old friend was stunned. "I haven't changed it for you yet. You didn't tell me how to deal with it, so I don't dare to change the test results without your permission." After he said this, he didn't hear any response from his old friend. Thinking carefully, he suddenly realized the meaning behind his words. If he remembered correctly, one of the parties involved in the paternity test was his old friend himself, the doctor, who had seen a lot of feuds between rich and powerful families, immediately thought of a possibility. He raised his head to look at Chong Mingang. As expected, at this moment, Chong Mingang's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Chapter 1571. Chong Mingang's hand gripped the report tightly, almost twisting the thin piece of paper out of shape. His voice sounded like it was coming out of his mouth, word by word. "You're saying that you haven't made any changes to this report?" The doctor looked at him and knew what was going on. He felt a bit of sympathy for his old friend, but he still said what needed to be said. "Yes, this is the correct result." All that was left in Chong Mingang's mind was anger. He raised his head and looked at his old friend. "I'm sorry, old Yang. I probably won't be able to eat with you tonight. Another day, I'll definitely come and apologize." The doctor, old Yang, knew that his old friend must be feeling terrible. He nodded and said, "We're close friends. Go and do your own things." Chong Mingang wasn't in the mood to talk to him. He stepped on the accelerator and rushed home. Dinner was already prepared at home. And Yan and Wan were waiting for Chong Mingang to come back to eat. Chong Mingang returned home angrily. He didn't forget to ask all the servants to leave. The servants at home were all old. They knew that something big had happened. They just needed to work hard and get paid. Of course, they had to stay as far away from this kind of thing as possible. After everyone left, Chong Mingang walked into the dining room. And Yan also felt that the atmosphere was a bit off. And Wan, on the other hand, unconsciously acted coquettishly towards Chong Mingang. "Dad, you're finally back. I'm starving. I've been waiting for you to come back to eat." When he brought the Yin family's mother and daughter in, Chong Mingang said that he would treat Wen as his own daughter in the future. He wanted Wen to call him Dad. This was originally a polite sentence, but Wen took it seriously. From that day on, she kept calling him Dad. She even called him Yuji, her biological daughter. This was actually a bit inappropriate, but Chong Mingang thought that since she was his daughter, it didn't matter if she called him that. However, Wen's call of Dad sounded like mockery to Chong Mingang's ears. He, Chong Mingang, had been smart all his life. He was actually played like this. "Shut up. Who's your dad?" "I'm not your dad." Chong Mingang, who hadn't cursed in many years, couldn't help but curse. And Wen was dumbfounded by this scolding. Chong Minggang had always felt that he owed her. After such a long time, he hadn't even said a single harsh word to her. Even if he was dissatisfied with what had happened at the bar last time, he had only kept it in his heart. When had he ever spoken so harshly to her? The more An thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Her eyes turned red and tears fell. And Yen felt her heart ache as she watched from the side. She had been protecting her daughter all these years. Her only daughter was her lifeblood. She treasured her a lot. How could she not feel heartache when she saw her like this? Immediately, her eyes turned red as well. And Yen wiped her tears and looked at Chong Minggang with a pale face. I know you might not be happy outside, but you can't take it out on a child. I know that I'm useless. I'm just an unpresentable mistress. I'm not your legitimate wife, and I can't help you much in your career. So, if you're unhappy, take it out on me. Don't take it out on Wenwen, Minggang. And Yen had always been the most familiar with this tactic of retreating to advance and softening her attacks. She also knew that Chong Minggang liked this tactic the most. Chapter 1572. If it was any other time, Chong Minggang would not be able to hold on for more than a few minutes, then he would walk up and comfort her. But this time, he did not. And Yen cried for a while. Seeing that Chong Minggang did not react at all, she looked up at him in confusion. Chong Minggang was looking at her with a face full of mockery and even hatred. Seeing this woman act so well, Chong Minggang felt that he was the stupidest idiot in the world in the past. If he wasn't stupid, how could he be a cuckold and be a father for more than 20 years? He looked at An Yen in front of him. This woman, for so many years, had relied on this look to force herself to put on an act in front of him, to gain his pity. And he himself actually believed it. Probably because his expression was too scary, An Yen felt a trace of uneasiness. She even forgot to cry and whispered, Chong Minggang, what's wrong with you today? What's wrong? Chong Minggang laughed coldly, and threw the thing in his hand towards An Yen on the same day. An Yen panicked. She slowly stood up and picked up the thing on the ground. At first glance, she saw the words, paternity test, and her heart felt empty. She continued to read. When she saw the words, not related by blood, at the end, she felt all the energy in her body being sucked out. No wonder. No wonder Chong Minggang had such a reaction. She forced herself to hold on to the dining table to prevent herself from falling. She looked at Chong Minggang and wondered how she could find an excuse to cover up this matter. She slowly pursed her lips. Chong Minggang, this can't be true. Wenwen is definitely your child. It's true. There must be a problem with the results. Meeting Chong Minggang's mocking eyes, she took back the words that she did not believe. Chong Minggang sneered. Go on, go on. I just want to know, in front of this truth, what can you do? Make excuses for yourself? And Wen was already stunned by this unexpected development. What did father mean just now? She was not the daughter of the Chong family? How was that possible? Didn't mother tell her that she was the daughter of the Chong family? How could she not be the daughter of the Chong family? And Wen looked at her mother with hopeful eyes. No matter when, his mother would always be able to solve everything perfectly. This time, it would definitely be the same, right? Meeting her daughter's gaze, An Yen closed her eyes. Minggang, you'd rather believe this cold test result than believe in our years of relationship, right? Feelings? Chong Minggang sneered. Until Lu Qing had died, she still thought that he was deeply in love with her. How could he possibly believe in love? He looked at An Yen. I really didn't expect you to be such a powerful woman, An Yen. Chong Minggang, have never suffered such a huge setback in anyone's hands in my entire life. Hello, you're simply wonderful. Chong Minggang was furious. He pointed in the direction of the door. Now, immediately, get out of the Zhong family. Remember, don't try to take away anything that belongs to the Zhong family. Chong Minggang felt as if there was a layer of blood in front of his eyes. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. This slut. Bitch. Chapter 1573. And Wen felt that all of this was wrong. How could she not be the daughter of the Chong family? She was clearly Chong Minggang's daughter. She kept looking at Yen, hoping that in the next moment, Yen would be able to produce strong evidence to prove that the report was wrong. However, Yen remained silent. Even she felt guilty. She could not find a strong enough reason to refute this paternity test. Chong Minggang saw that the two of them were not moving and said eerily, "Do you want me to get someone to chase you out?" Yen, since we've known each other for more than 20 years, this is the last bit of face I'm giving you. In 10 minutes, if I see you still here, I'll get someone to throw your things and your people out. Yen looked at Chong Minggang. Her voice was filled with a sadness that shocked even herself. Are you really that heartless? Chong Minggang's expression was cold. At this time, this woman still had the face? She still had the face to say that he was heartless? He did not want to communicate with this woman any longer. I said, get lost. At this moment, Wen suddenly pounced forward and hugged Chong Minggang's arm. Father, I don't believe it. This can't be true. I'm your daughter. How can I not be your daughter? Father, you can't just ignore the father-daughter relationship we've had for so many years just because of some untrue things. At this moment, Wen's mind was blank. She only knew that she could not be chased out by Chong Minggang. If she was chased out, she would have to return to her previous life without any jewelry or branded goods. She had had enough of that life. She wanted to be a rich young lady. She wanted to be a superior person. Father loved her so much. He definitely wouldn't chase her out, right? However, she thought too much. Chong Minggang's kindness to her was all based on the fact that Wen was his biological daughter. Now, he knew that it was all a joke. And he was the one who was being played like a monkey in the joke. How could he still have fatherly love for Wen? He even felt disgusted when he thought about how Wen was someone else's child, but he had raised her like a treasure for more than 20 years. Wen was pushed away by a strong force. She lost her balance and her head hit the edge of the table. So painful. For a moment, she couldn't even see clearly. Yen was shocked and hurriedly ran over to support her daughter. Looking at Chong Minggang's cold and mocking eyes, Yen finally realized that this man really hated the mother and daughter pair to the core. Chong Minggang coldly said, 7 minutes left. Yen's heart trembled. She knew that Chong Minggang was a man of his word. If he was really chased out later, that would be really embarrassing. She said to Wen, Mom will go pack up and come find you soon. Pack up? Chong Minggang sneered, remember my words. Don't try to take away anything that belongs to the Chongming family. None of you are worthy. Yen stopped in her tracks. Why didn't they take away what belonged to the Zhong family? All these years, she had never gone out to look for a job. She had always relied on Zhong Minggang's money to support her. How could she have anything that truly belonged to her? Was this man trying to force them to their deaths? Chapter 1574. She couldn't help but turn around and beg, Minggang. Zhong Minggang raised his hand and looked at his watch. There are still 5 minutes. Don't call me Minggang, I feel like you're dirtying my name. After being humiliated again and again, even Yen couldn't take it anymore. She screamed, okay, Zhong Minggang, since you're so heartless, I won't say anything more. She bent down and helped Wen up, and the two of them walked out of the door with difficulty. Zhong Minggang looked coldly at the backs of the mother and daughter, and pressed the service bell in the house. The nannies and servants who had been hiding earlier all appeared in the dining room. Zhong Minggang ordered coldly, clean this place up, and burn everything in the room where the mother and daughter are staying. The mother and daughter? The servants looked at each other and understood that he was referring to the Yin family. Master was finally tired of them? Although they didn't understand what had happened here, everyone was happy to see such an outcome. Nanny Li was the most experienced here, and she stood up and asked, those expensive jewels? Zhong Minggang's eyes flashed with disgust, burn them all. Yes. Everyone understood his attitude now. It seemed that Sir really hated that pair of mother and daughter to the core. TSK, they didn't know what they had done to anger the heavens and the people. Nanny Li asked again, then, Master, when will eldest miss come back? Hearing his eldest daughter's name, Zhong Minggang's eyes finally warmed up. Tomorrow, I will personally go to the Lu family to pick Yuji up. A smile appeared on Nanny Li's face when she heard this. Alright, then I'll go and clean Mrs. room again. Once everyone had left, Halcyon finally let out a sigh of relief. He sat on a chair in the dining room and rubbed his forehead tiredly. Recently, because of the period in the company, he had been running around, and after this incident, he deeply felt that his body couldn't take it anymore. After this period of time, when he had time, he had to go to the hospital to have a checkup. Lu family. Gu Xingyin was sitting on the sofa and eating fruits. She was smiling as she listened to the system's live broadcast of what happened in the Zhong family. She knew that this pair of mother and daughter from the Yin family didn't need anyone to deal with them at all. They could dig their own graves. Eldest aunt walked over and saw the smile on her face. What are you looking at? You look so happy. Gu Xingyin replied casually, I'm watching a show. When first aunt heard this, she glanced at the TV that was playing a show about the battle between rich mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. She was deeply worried about her niece's taste. Why would such a young girl like to watch such things? Gu Xingyin still didn't know that her taste was being despised. She thought for a moment and said, my father will probably come tomorrow. Hearing her mention Chong Minggang, eldest aunt immediately threw the matter of watching the show to the back of her mind, and the smile on her face disappeared. Sure. However, it won't be easy to bring you back from the Lu family. The next day, Chong Minggang didn't even go to the company. Early in the morning, he brought a car full of gifts to the Lu family. His attitude was unexpectedly sincere. Lu Qingshan looked at him and snorted, ever since Qin he left, I haven't seen President Chong come to our house. This time, you finally remembered our house? Chapter 1575. Chong Minggang was feeling guilty, so he didn't react when he heard this. Instead, he smiled. This reaction surprised the Lu family members. Chong Minggang asked the servants to carry all the gifts in. He smiled apologetically, Father-in-law, I know that I did something shameful some time ago. Now I know that I was wrong. He said sincerely, I won't beat around the bush. I came here today to take Yuji back. After all, Yuji is the daughter of the Zhong family. Although I know that you kept her here because you like her, others might not think so, right? Those who don't know would think that Yuji is not favored in the Zhong family. His words were beautiful and pleasant, and Lu Qingshan's expression became slightly better. However, he still snorted coldly, take Yuji home? Don't you have a gentle mistress and a gentle and well-behaved daughter in your family? Those who don't know would think that she is your biological daughter. The words biological daughter were like a thorn that stabbed into Chong Minggang's heart. His disgust for Madame and her daughter increased by several degrees. He still looked guilty, I was muddle-headed. I'm already so old, and I still did something so embarrassing. Yesterday, I already chased that mother and daughter out. I swear that such a thing will never happen again. Chased out? The Lu family didn't expect this. In addition, Chong Minggang took out the paternity test. This is the paternity test I did a few days ago. I didn't do anything to hurt Qin He before marriage. Seeing this, Lu Qingshan's expression relaxed slightly. He nodded at Chong Minggang, and his tone softened a lot, you are thoughtful. Gu Xingyin sneered at the side. She thought that Chong Minggang was a flexible person. Last night, he was so angry because of this thing. This was the proof of his humiliation. However, today, he could use it as a reason to show his loyalty to the Yu family. It was no wonder that such a tolerant person could be successful in the business world. At this time, Lu Qingshan looked at Gu Xingyin, Yuji is also an adult. She has her own ideas. Why don't you ask her if she's willing to go back to the Zhong family with you? Hearing this, Chong Minggang looked at Gu Xingyin. As long as the Yu clan did not obstruct them, he still had a high chance of persuading his daughter. Just as he thought, Gu Xingyin did not even resist and agreed to go home with him. Chong Minggang finally relaxed. He felt that he had finally convinced the Yu clan. However, he didn't know that this was the Yu clan's original intention. On the way home, Gu Xingyin sat in the front passenger seat and deliberately provoked Zhong Minggang. "Dad, did you really send those two people away?" The last thing Chong Minggang wanted was for someone to mention the Yin family's mother and daughter. However, he urgently needed to ease his relationship with his daughter. At this moment, he could only try his best to suppress the disgust in his heart. "Father has chased them out. Don't worry, Yuji, no one will make you unhappy anymore." Gu Xingyin smiled and nodded. Chong Minggang only thought that she was happy. He didn't know that Gu Xingyin was thinking, "No one will make me unhappy, but soon, there will be many things that will make you unhappy." Chapter 1576. Chong Minggang patiently tried to ease their relationship for a few days. On the third day, he finally couldn't take it anymore. That day, when they were having dinner, he couldn't help but ask, "Yuji, the Chong group has a big project plan in the next 2 days. All the major shareholders need to vote together. Do you have time to go to the company?" He was really afraid that his daughter would say, "Just let uncle go." Fortunately, she didn't. Gu Xingyin just nodded casually. "No problem." Chong Ming let out a sigh of relief. He seemed to be advising and warning his daughter at the same time. "Yuji, the 30% shares in your hands are very important. You can't sell it to anyone. Do you understand? If anyone wants to buy it, you have to tell me." It finally came. Gu Xingyin put down the bowl in her hand and wiped her mouth with a wet tissue. "Dad, don't worry. I know what's important and what's not." Chong Minggang nodded with relief and said casually, "If you think it's troublesome, I can manage it for you." "It's not a problem." Gu Xingyin rolled her eyes in her heart. She thought that Chong Minggang would at least say something in exchange, but from his tone, it seemed like he wanted to take her shares for free without offering anything. And under the name of managing it for her? Did he think Chong Ming Yuji was a fool? She immediately smiled. "It's not troublesome. Anyway, I'm just a leisurely shareholder. I just get dividends and do nothing, right?" Seeing that she didn't answer, Chong Minggang wasn't thick-skinned enough to continue asking. This conversation was left unsettled. Gu Xingyin felt that she should check the calendar before going out today. At noon, she was disgusted by Chong Minggang. Not long after she went out, she met Zhongqing on the road. This person was holding a bouquet of delicate red roses in his hand and directly blocked her on the road. "Yuji, I love you. After such a long time, your anger should have subsided. Can you forgive me?" Zhongqing's face was full of affection. He directly confessed to Gu Xingyin on the streets. This guy looked like a dog, drove a luxury car worth millions, and was even holding a bouquet of red roses in his hand. It was obvious that he was about to stir up trouble, and he quickly attracted the attention of most of the passers-by. Especially when some passers-by recognized that this tall, rich, and handsome man was the young master of the Zhong family. As soon as these words came out, the passers-by who didn't know were even more enlightened. "Oh, he really is a tall, rich, and handsome man." Such a scene was probably one of the most romantic scenes in the hearts of most little girls who were filled with fantasies. However, as one of the parties involved, Gu Xingyin said that she only had one word in her heart, "motherfucker," but she didn't know if she should say it. If she had Zhongqing in her heart, then so be it. At most, it would be a high-profile public display of affection. It was nothing. However, the problem was that this man had been caught cheating on her not long ago. She had already made it clear that the two of them were finished. How could he be so shameless as to do such a thing? Gu Xingyin was sick of it. There were already many spectators gathered by the side, and some people had already started to jeer for Gu Xingyin to agree. These people didn't even know what was going on. They were only there to watch the show. Zhongcheng had deliberately chosen this kind of place. He was also a little scheming. Most girls were thin-skinned, Under such circumstances, with the crowd jeering, it was easy for them to agree. Chapter 1577. However, Gu Xingyin was not an ordinary young girl. She was not willing to give Zhongqing face. She looked at Zhongqing coldly. I thought we had made it very clear. Zhongqing, it's over between you and me. Zhongqing did not take this sentence to heart. He still looked at Gu Xingyin affectionately. I know that you are angry with me. I have been regretting it all this time. I really know that I was wrong. Please give me another chance. Yuji, give me another chance. Let's get married right away, okay? As he said this, he actually took out an exquisite box from his pocket. He changed from repentance to a proposal. This scene made the eyes of the passers-by turn red. Originally, Zhongqing's appearance was the kind that could easily arouse people's good feelings. In addition, he was the son of a rich family. Many passers-by felt that it was really rare for such a tall, rich, and handsome man to do this for a girl. There were young people in the crowd shouting, "Say yes, marry him," and so on. When Lu drove past here, he was attracted by this place. He had never cared about this kind of bustle. However, when he passed by, an auntie who was watching the show in the innermost part seemed to have something to do. She answered the phone and struggled to squeeze out a gap in the crowd. Just at this moment, Lu saw Gu Xingyin in the middle of the crowd clearly. It seemed that she was the heroine of the bustle. The crowd squeezed forward again. Lu frowned. After a few seconds of silence, he decisively found an empty spot. After parking the car, he walked toward the crowd. In the crowd, Gu Xingyin listened to the jeering of the people around and did not panic at all. She raised her head and coldly swept her gaze across her surroundings. This gaze was so imposing that many people subconsciously shut their mouths. And the passers-by around saw her appearance so carefully for the first time. What a beautiful girl. No wonder Zhongqing, such a rich man, liked her so much. Gu Xingyin glanced at the expensive diamond ring in Zhongqing's hand and said coldly, "Keep your things." Zhongqing, when you cheated on me, I made it clear that we were finished. I don't believe you, and I'm not interested. Don't insult me with marriage. If I marry someone like you, I'll feel disgusted for the rest of my life. Cheating. The passers-by finally understood why this girl had not relented. He actually had such a criminal record. Many of the passers-by who were clamoring for Gu Xingyin to agree shut their mouths. Of course, there were also some people who felt that as a man, how could there be a time when he did not cheat? It was already good enough that he could admit his mistakes and change. Zhongqing seemed to be able to sense that there were many unreadable gazes around him. He did not expect that Gu Xingyin would not give him any face and expose his shortcomings in public. Looking at this, she really had no intention of reconciling with him. He gritted his teeth and looked at Gu Xingyin. We really don't have any chance? Gu Xingyin was silent. Her attitude could not be more obvious. The crowd did not know where the laughter and boos came from, as if they were laughing at Zhongqing. Zhongqing's face turned red, and he looked at Gu Xingyin with hatred. Changyuji, I've humbled myself and begged for your forgiveness today, but you didn't even bother to acknowledge me. One day, you will regret it. Chapter 1578. Gu Xingyin said lightly, what will happen to me in the future, you don't have to worry about it. Zhongqing glanced at the delicate red rose in his hand. He had carefully prepared it for today, but looking at it now, it seemed that there was no need for it. He threw the bouquet on the ground. Zhong Yuji, you will find that you can't find a man who loves you more than me. A woman like you doesn't have a heart. Even when you were with me, you didn't love me. That was a little too much. Gu Xingyin didn't expect that Zhongqing would be so ungentlemanly after being angry. She frowned. Zhongqing, you are the one who cheated on me first. Don't say that you love me after doing such a thing. This kind of love, Heavy Rain Ji, cannot afford. I have never done anything wrong to you. We can part on good terms. At most, we won't be friends in the future. Do you want to be my enemy? A woman like me doesn't have a heart. It's none of your business. Whoever I fall in love with has nothing to do with you. Gu Xingyin felt that he must have been out of his mind to try to reason with such a narcissistic idiot. She turned around and looked at the passers-by around her. She didn't even want to maintain the smile on her face. Excuse me, let me pass, okay? She didn't know that her right arm was pulled by someone as soon as she left. Gu Xingyin turned her head. Zhong Cheng's red eyes appeared in front of her. Gu Xingyin frowned. He doesn't look right? But she didn't have the mood to study this. She tried to shake him off but failed. She said coldly, "Let go of me." Zhong Cheng just stared at her as if he didn't hear it. What do you mean by what you just said? Whoever you fall in love with has nothing to do with me? Who do you fall in love with? Do you have someone else in your heart, so you want to break up with me? Gu Xingyin's mood at the moment was like 10,000 curses running through her heart. She barely managed to maintain her composure and didn't swear in public, but her expression had truly turned cold. Zhongcheng, you're the one who cheated on me when we were dating. You need to be clear about one thing. You are the one who wronged me, not the other way around. This planet doesn't revolve around you. Why are you still thinking about such meaningless things at this time? Are you sick? She didn't expect that her words would trigger an invisible switch, and Zhongcheng's eyes instantly went wild. Gu Xingyin could only feel the pain in his arm. Zhongcheng muttered to himself, sick. Ha 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 ha, I am sick. You woman, I love you so much, but you won't forgive me. You woman. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. Zhongcheng's behavior was clearly abnormal. Could it be that he really had some sort of mental illness? The passers-by who were closer to the scene probably noticed that something was wrong. Gu Xingyin shouted to the people next to her, he's not normal. Come and help me pull him away. Several young men heard the words and came over. Zhongcheng suddenly pulled Gu Xingyin's body and threw her to the ground. Indifferent woman, go to hell. Gu Xingyin felt the strength and could only try to hold her head with both hands. It would probably hurt a lot. But the expected pain didn't come. Chapter 1579. Gu Xingyin only felt something pulling her arm, and then due to inertia, her whole body fell into a cool embrace. The familiar fragrance of the lotus instantly enveloped her, making her feel at ease. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes and met He Lu's eyes with a trace of concern. Are you okay? She asked in a low voice. Gu Xingyin shook her head, thank you for arriving in time. He Lu let go of her, and Gu Xingyin turned to look at Zhongcheng, who was standing on the side. Zhongcheng's expression was still a little crazy at the moment, and several young and strong men had already approached him. As long as he did anything wrong, they would subdue him. Zhongcheng looked at He Lu strangely. He felt that this person was a little familiar, but at this time, it was obvious that his thinking ability was somewhat insufficient. He stretched out his hand and pointed at He Lu, his voice full of resentment. Who is this man? Is he your new lover? Is it because of him that you want to break up with me? I knew it, you women are all fickle. As soon as these words came out, not only did Gu Xingyin feel irritated, but the people around couldn't stand it anymore. After watching the scene for a long time, they roughly knew what had happened. This tall, rich, and handsome man cheated on his girlfriend when the two were dating, and his girlfriend broke up with him angrily. As a result, after the breakup, he realized that his girlfriend was his true love, and carefully prepared a gift and a proposal to get back together. This kind of trick was not unfamiliar, and it was normal for his girlfriend to be unwilling to forgive him. After all, there was a first time for everything, and no one could say for sure who the great young Master Zhong would like next time. Originally, it was fine to part on good terms, but with Zhongcheng's conditions, how could he worry about no beauties coming to him? This matter was originally Zhongcheng's unsightly behavior, and later he even wanted to use violence, which was even more low class. Anyone who saw this would feel that Zhongcheng was pestering her and was unwilling to let her go. Especially now, Zhongcheng directly scolded her in anger, and he didn't just scold one person, but all the women. At this time, even the women who had felt pity for him when they saw his sad appearance felt that he deserved it. This was the best time to see a person's true thoughts. If this was how young Master Zhong viewed women, then what he said about his deep love for his girlfriend was most likely an exaggeration. Gu Xingyin looked at Zhong Cheng coldly. At this moment, she was sure that there was something wrong with Zhong Cheng's brain. She knew that Zhong Cheng was a smart person. Under normal circumstances, he would never say such words that would put himself in a disadvantageous position. And from Zhong Cheng's appearance, it was very obvious that he had been provoked and suddenly had a relapse. Gu Xingyin did not know what illness he had, but she knew that it was best to calm him down as soon as possible and not continue to be agitated. However, who was Zhong Cheng? Why should she, Gu Xingyin, empathize with him? If it was an innocent person, Gu Xingyin wouldn't have minded lending a helping hand. But, if it was Zhong Cheng, the more he could not be provoked, the more Gu Xingyin wanted to provoke him. She glanced sideways at He Lu and suddenly said, "Please do me a favor." He Lu heard this and lowered his head to look at her. "How?" Gu Xingyin smiled. "Later, just don't expose me." Chapter 1580. He Lu didn't quite understand what she meant, but he still nodded, indicating that there was no problem. Gu Xingyin looked up and smiled at him, then looked at Zhong Cheng. She smiled very comfortably, as if she wasn't affected by Zhong Cheng's appearance at all. "You're right. This person is my new boyfriend. We have a good relationship and are going to get married soon. But I want to defend myself. I only met him after I broke up with you." Her tone was light and slow, as if she was telling a story. "Speaking of which, I have to thank you for cheating. Zhong Cheng, thank you for letting me break up with you. After leaving you, I realized that there are so many good men in this world waiting for me, so that I don't have to hang myself on a crooked tree like you." Some people around couldn't help but laugh. This girl's move was beautiful. She didn't make a scene like a crazy person. Instead, she used another way to ruthlessly repay this man for cheating. "I left you, so I found a better man. Thank you for cheating." There was nothing more ironic than this. Who hadn't met a few scumbags when they were young? The best way to deal with such a person was to kick him away and find a better one. It was also the best revenge for a scumbag. If you don't cherish me, someone will. Zhong Cheng's eyes turned even redder because of this sentence. His whole body trembled, as if he was trying his best to suppress something. Gu Xingyin saw him like this, took out her phone and pressed 110 without hesitation. This man looked very abnormal. He had a violent tendency to hurt people just now. Gu Xingyin said that as a good citizen, it was naturally better to leave this kind of thing to the police. When Zhong Cheng saw her actions, he suddenly lost control. He rushed directly towards Gu Xingyin and shouted, "Damn woman, I'm going to kill you." The few people beside him hurriedly stopped him, but Zhong Cheng, who was crazy, was very strong. He broke free from the restraints of the three men and approached Gu Xingyin directly. Gu Xingyin's eyes turned cold. Just as she was about to react, He Lu's voice came from the side. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." He took a step forward and stood in front of Gu Xingyin. Everyone then saw that Zhong Cheng, whom even three adult men couldn't stop, was directly punched to the ground by this handsome and cold man. He couldn't get up for a long time. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but smile. How could she forget that He Lu was a major general in the military? With him here, Zhong Cheng really couldn't stir up much trouble. Vaguely, she could hear the girls in the crowd whispering, "He's so handsome, if it were me, I would definitely choose such a man," and so on. When He Lu looked up, he just happened to see this extremely faint smile. His gaze could not help but soften. At this moment, the sound of sirens came from outside. A police car had arrived. "What's going on? Who's calling the police here?" Two uniformed policemen waved the crowd aside and walked in. Gu Xingyin stood up. "It's me, police comrade." She pointed at Zhong Cheng, who was still rolling on the ground holding his stomach. "This person on the ground is my ex-boyfriend. I caught him cheating and broke up with him. Today, he insisted on getting back together with me. I didn't want to, so he used violence on me, the police looked at Gu Xingyin and then at Zhongcheng, who was lying on the ground, and were a little suspicious. Chapter 1581. After all, no matter how one looked at it, Zhongcheng didn't look like the violent one. Gu Xingyin quickly added, "Officer, you can ask the onlookers. If my boyfriend hadn't come in time, I might have been hospitalized today." The people next to her also said that she wasn't lying. They said that the man was scary when he went crazy. The policeman pointed at Zhongcheng on the ground hesitantly. "Then what is he doing?" Gu Xingyin said, "He rushed over to hit me. My boyfriend was defending himself." The policeman was speechless. It was also okay to beat someone up in self-defense until they couldn't get up. But looking at the reaction of the people around, this lady didn't seem to be lying. He thought about it and asked another person to help Zhongcheng back to the police station. He said to Gu Xingyin and He Lu, "I'll have to trouble the two of you to come with me to make a statement." Before Gu Xingyin could say anything, He Lu took out something and handed it over. "My girlfriend was quite frightened today. She doesn't want to see that person again. Can I go with you?" The policeman took the small notebook in confusion. When he looked at it, his hand trembled and he almost dropped it on the ground. This, his attitude instantly became respectful, and he politely handed the item back with both hands. "How can we trouble you? This young lady seems to have suffered quite a shock. It would be better for you to accompany her to the hospital for a checkup. When it's convenient for you to make a statement, you can make it up." The policeman didn't expect that a casual relationship dispute would involve such a big shot. If he really took the man in for a statement, the chief would probably let him go tomorrow. He Lu wasn't surprised by this result. He put away the notebook and nodded. "Okay, I'll make it up another day. Now, take her to the hospital first." The policeman watched them leave with a very friendly attitude. The onlookers had been watching a good show. In the end, the policeman's attitude added a layer of mystery to this big show. This lady's boyfriend was not only handsome and good at fighting, but the key was that he seemed to have a strong background. He Lu and Gu Xingyin walked for a while until they were far away from that place. No one followed them. Gu Xingyin exhaled and pressed her forehead. She raised her head and smiled at the man who was a head taller than her. "Thank you so much for today." He Lu shook his head. "It's nothing." Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and said, "You've helped me so much, but I still don't know your name." She took the lead and stretched out her hand. "My surname is Chong Yuji." The heaviness of overlapping, the rain of clouds dissipating and rain clearing. He Lu looked at the fair palm in front of him and slowly placed his hand on it. He gently held the hand that was very slender compared to his own. "I'm He Lu," he as in celebration, Lu as in higher level. When he let go, He Lu subconsciously twisted his fingers, and a trace of reluctance flashed through his heart. Gu Xingyin looked at the time. She had been delayed for so long. She suggested, "It's getting late. As a thank you, I'll treat you to dinner." He Lu was surprised. "Don't you need to go home for dinner?" Gu Xingyin shook her head and asked, "Do you have an appointment?" He Lu shook his head. Gu Xingyin laughed. "That's good. I know a very good seafood restaurant. Let's go." He Lu followed her silently and took out his mobile phone to send a message to He Lu, "I have something to do tonight. I won't go home for dinner. Don't wait." Chapter 1582. He Chi, who had just returned home from work, saw the text message and scolded with a smile. This kid specially asked his sister-in-law to cook his favorite dishes, and now he's telling me that he's not going home to eat? He Lu didn't care what his second brother was thinking. The place Gu Xingyin recommended was very good, and the two of them ate happily. After dinner, He Lu sent Gu Xingyin back. There was soothing music playing in the car. Coupled with the fact that they had just finished eating, Gu Xingyin felt drowsy. He Lu suddenly asked, "When are we going to get the marriage certificate?" Gu Xingyin was startled awake by this sentence. She quickly sat up straight and looked at He Lu. "What did you just say?" He Lu saw Gu Xingyin's expression in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were wide open, and her mouth was slightly open in surprise, revealing a hidden bright red tip of her tongue. She looked like a frightened rabbit. It was inexplicably delicious. He repeated his words calmly. I said, when are we going to get the marriage certificate? Gu Xingyin was still a little dazed. Obviously, she couldn't keep up with his rhythm. He Lu kindly reminded her. You said this afternoon that we were about to get married. Gu Xingyin, she said with some difficulty, that. Didn't you say it to anger Zhongcheng? He Lu, so? Gu Xingyin smiled. So, you can't take it seriously, right? The car suddenly braked and stopped. He Lu turned his head and looked at Gu Xingyin intently. Gu Xingyin was a little scared by such a gaze. He Lu looked at her nervous appearance and felt funny in his heart. Did he look so scary? But on the surface, he still looked expressionless. Do you know who I am? Gu Xingyin nodded. The daughter of the Zhong family wasn't an idiot. Coupled with the police's reaction earlier, there was a problem if she said that she didn't know. He Lu was very satisfied with this answer. He continued, since you know who I am, then you must have some understanding of my character. You should also know that I, He Lu, have never said anything false. Gu Xingyin almost instantly understood what he meant. So what he meant was that even if the two of them were pretending at the beginning, since both of them said such words, the fake had to become true. Gu Xingyin blinked and blinked again, trying his best to calm himself down. But it was no use. She said carefully, but for things like marriage, it's better for both of us. There is no emotional foundation. Although she was happy to do so, she still had to say what she needed to say because of Chong Yuji's identity. He Lu frowned. Who said there is no emotional foundation? Gu Xingyin. He Lu unfastened his seatbelt with one hand and turned to look at Gu Xingyin. You don't think that I'm the kind of person who will be kind enough to save a random person I see on the road, do you? Gu Xingyin. So I have feelings for you. He Lu said. As for you. He looked at Gu Xingyin and suddenly bent down. The space in the car was small. When he was so close, Gu Xingyin only felt that her whole breath was filled with He Lu's smell. That light and distant lotus smell was a smell that belonged only to her. Chapter 1583. She couldn't help blushing. Gu Xingyin didn't need to look to know that she must be blushing at this moment. He Lu was very satisfied with her reaction. He said, Look, you blushed when you were in contact with me like this. You were nervous. It means that you still have feelings for me. Gu Xingyin, did that count? She forced herself to say, no matter who it is, it's impossible for him not to have feelings for me. After she finished speaking, she felt that the charming atmosphere around her suddenly became cold. Although He Lu's expression didn't change at all, Gu Xingyin knew that this man was unhappy. He Lu didn't step back. On the contrary, he moved closer again, and they could smell each other's breath. He Lu's low voice sounded in the car, Do you feel disgusted that I'm so close to you first? Gu Xingyin didn't say anything, but her face turned redder. This reaction obviously pleased He Lu. He moved closer again. This time, he touched Gu Xingyin's lips firmly. His lips and tongue didn't go deep. Instead, he gently sucked Gu Xingyin's lower lip. There was no extra movement, but there was a hint of affection lingering around the two of them. He Lu looked at Gu Xingyin like this. He let go of her lips. Do you feel disgusted that I'm like this? Gu Xingyin closed her eyes. She already knew what He Lu meant. He was forcing her to admit that he was different to her. Her body and her reaction couldn't lie. She didn't feel disgusted by his touch. She knew his purpose, but she couldn't do anything about it. This man, even if he used an overt scheme that you could see through, could still make you speechless. He Lu suddenly laughed out loud. If another man treated you like this, would you do the same? Gu Xingyin suddenly opened her eyes. She looked at the man who was close to her and sighed in her heart. She took the initiative to put her hand around his neck and put her lips on his. At this point, there was no point in being pretentious. He Lu was surprised by her initiative, but he quickly reacted. He bent down and kissed her fiercely. After a long time, the two of them finally separated. He Lu's voice sounded a little breathless. He leaned against Gu Xingyin's forehead and whispered, "Tomorrow, I will visit your house." Gu Xingyin shook her head. He Lu was puzzled. "Why?" Gu Xingyin said, "My father is the only one in the Chong family." "My father," she didn't finish her sentence, but He Lu understood what she meant. His brother had mentioned the things that Zhongming had done at home. He held Gu Xingyin's hand and said, "It's okay, Yuji. I'm with you because I'm with you. It has nothing to do with your father." He didn't have much time off, so he wanted to settle this matter before he returned to the army. He knew it was rushed, but he didn't want to wait. He Lu was like this. It was difficult for him to take a person to heart, but if he really did, he wouldn't hesitate at all and wouldn't allow anyone to treat her badly. "Don't worry. I'll do everything well." Gu Xingyin's eyes flashed. She met the man's determined gaze and didn't object in the end. He Lu was in a good mood as he sent Gu Xingyin home. Then he called home on the way back. He had found his future wife. "Hurry up and prepare the gift and wedding." The He family was in chaos. Chapter 1584. When He Lu returned home, He Chi had already received the news. He and his wife sat in the living room with serious expressions on their faces as they waited for He Lu to come back. He Lu wasn't surprised at all that they had such a reaction. He walked to the other side of the sofa and sat down. Then he said, "What do you want to ask?" He Chi and his wife's eyes lit up and they were about to speak. Then they heard He Lu say slowly, "Don't ask first. I'll tell you when we get home tomorrow." He Chi and his wife, this feeling of knowing that there was a secret right in front of them but being able to pry it out was really uncomfortable. But no matter how unhappy they were, they could only hold it in. If He Lu wasn't willing to say it, no one would know. So the next morning, He Chi and his wife got up early. After they packed everything, they returned to the He family mansion with He Lu. When the three of them arrived home, they found that the house was already full of people. Even their brother, who had always been very busy, had gone home. Seeing that his brother was looking at him, He Ji calmly adjusted his glasses and said calmly, "Today is the weekend." He Chi. Don't think that I know that you've never had a weekend. To be honest, every time he saw He Ji's busy appearance, He Chi was especially glad that he chose the path of business. Now that his business was on the right track, he had extra time to travel around the world with his wife and daughter. He Lu faced the burning gazes of the whole family alone. However, he didn't feel nervous at all. Instead, he felt that it was very good. Most of the important people in the He family were here. If there were any questions, he could explain it all at once. There was no need for someone to suddenly appear and ask him all sorts of questions. The He family members looked around. In the end, old master He coughed lightly and said, "He Lu, you called back yesterday to say that you found your future daughter-in-law?" He Lu nodded with a serious expression. "Yes, grandfather. I've confirmed my relationship with her and am preparing to marry her." This, old master He's heart skipped a beat. He asked, "Which family is she from?" He Lu said, "Lu Qingshan's granddaughter, Zhong Minggang's daughter." Old master He didn't know much about the business world, so he turned to He Chi. He Chi roughly explained the background of the Lu family and the Zhong family. Old master He nodded. Her family background can be considered clean. In other words, he was not dissatisfied with Gu Xingyin's identity. In reality, even if he wasn't satisfied, He Lu wouldn't listen to him. Old master He also asked, "Why haven't I heard you mention this before?" Logically speaking, they were already talking about marriage. With He Lu's personality, he shouldn't be so secretive. Hearing this, He Chi wanted to cover his face and laugh. As far as he knew, his younger brother had only gotten to know him after he returned home from his long vacation. How could there have been any rumors about him before? He Lu didn't hide anything. "I haven't known her for long. We just confirmed our relationship yesterday." Old master He, yesterday they confirmed their relationship, and today they were talking about marriage? Even though old master he knew that his grandson was very efficient, this was a little too fast. He Lu's parents weren't as conflicted as old master he, in their eyes, it was a good thing that their son was willing to get married. Old master he had many grandchildren, but they only had one son. They were still waiting for their grandchildren. Chapter 1585. He Lu could also see old master he's dilemma. He directly expressed his position. Grandfather, I like her and want to marry her. No woman has ever made me feel this way. What he meant was that it was love at first sight and he didn't want to marry anyone else. Old master he looked at the grandson who resembled him the most. He sighed in his heart and said, find a time to bring her back for a look. Marriage is such a big thing. You have to let the elders take a look. He Lu nodded. Okay, I'll take care of this before I return to the army. When he came out of the He family's old residence, He Lu was pulled aside by his impatient parents. He Lu's mother was in the arts and had been spoiled by He Lu's father her whole life. She was already in her 40s, but her personality was still very romantic. Xiao Lu, is the girl you like pretty? She asked her son. Father he was helpless. Other people's elders would ask about their character and family background. Her mother-in-law, on the other hand, only cared about these things. He Lu answered her seriously, she's very pretty, Mom. Mother he smiled happily when she heard that. She loved beautiful things the most and naturally hoped that her son could find a pleasing daughter-in-law. If an ordinary person heard this madam's requirements for choosing a daughter-in-law, they would probably be speechless. The next morning, He Lu brought gifts to the Zhong family's house. Chongming heard from his daughter that her boyfriend would be coming the next day. When he heard that it wasn't Zhong Cheng, Father Chong threw a tantrum. But Gu Xingyin wasn't afraid of him. In the end, Chongming Gang still chose to stay at home. No matter what, if he wanted to be the Zhong family's son-in-law, he had to be decent. He was afraid that his daughter's taste wasn't good and she found someone with a bad family background and character. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if word got out? But the next day, when he saw He Lu in a trench coat and carrying a gift box, Father Chong thought he was hallucinating. He had seen He Lu before. At a charity dinner hosted by He Chi, He Lu happened to be free at that time, so he was dragged by his brother to support the event. Chongming Gang found some connections and squeezed his way out. He threw a few million yuan and stood far away, watching the He family surrounded by countless important people. At that time, He Lu was like this, standing expressionlessly beside He Chi. He saw her, but it was obvious that she didn't notice him at all. But now, this man, who was said to have become a major general at a young age, was actually her daughter's boyfriend? Chongming just felt like he was still asleep. But He Lu's cold face and his daughter's normal expression told him that this was not a dream. Her daughter had found a major general as her boyfriend, and he was from the He family. After a brief moment of surprise, they were overjoyed. If his daughter managed to get close to the He family, then he would be the He family's in-law. At that time, who wouldn't give him some face in the business world? Chongming Gang's face was full of joy the entire morning. When the few of them were chatting, he never stopped praising them. He even asked about He Lu and Gu Xingyin's future plans. He couldn't wait to pack up Gu Xingyin and send her to him. Gu Xingyin felt embarrassed as she listened. They had lunch at the Chong family's house. After lunch, He Lu said goodbye. Gu Xingyin also used the excuse of seeing him off and walked out with him. Chapter 1586. Thank you for your hard work. He Lu suddenly reached out and held Gu Xingyin's hand. He only came over today to chat with Chong Minggang for a while, but he could see that Chong Minggang didn't have much sincerity for this daughter. It was obvious that he was most concerned about his career. He felt sorry for Gu Xingyin for such a father. Gu Xingyin shook her head. Actually, he wasn't harsh on me. If you could have known me earlier, you could have met my mother. Thinking of Lu Qinghe, that gentle and beautiful woman appeared in her memory. My mother gave me all her love. If she met you, she would definitely like you very much. He Lu held her hand tightly. If I treat you well in the future, Auntie's soul in heaven will be happy to see it. Gu Shengyin smiled and nodded. In the afternoon, they went to the Lu family. This was requested by He Lu himself. After he returned home yesterday, He Chi went to find him and told him some things he found out. Obviously, the Lu family was more like her family than Chong Minggang. And in Gu Shengyin's heart, the Lu family was probably closer than the Chong family. So if she wanted to meet the parents, He Lu was willing to accompany Gu Shengyin to the Lu family. Gu Shengyin was stunned for a moment after hearing his plan. Then, he slowly smiled. Thank you, He Lu. He Lu just held her hand tightly and didn't say anything. Without a doubt, He Lu's arrival shocked the entire Lu family. Because it wasn't announced in advance, only Old Master Lu, Lu Qingshan, and Gu Shengyin's eldest aunt were at home. Then, Gu Shengyin brought He Lu into the house in broad daylight. Old Master Lu was drinking tea at that time. When he saw the man who Gu Shengyin called Old Master Lu behind, he almost choked. He forced himself to calm down, and then tried to ask what happened as calmly as possible. Gu Shengyin told He Lu about how he and He Lu met in a few sentences. He Lu listened quietly at the side. During this time, Elder Lu's gaze never left the two of them. Although He Lu's expression was cold, his eyes were always on his granddaughter. When he saw that He Lu had personally poured tea for her, he lowered his gaze and sighed in his heart. If I'm not mistaken, General He and our Yuji have only known each other for less than a week, right? Elder Lu still remembered the scene when Gu Shengyin asked who that man was. He Lu's gaze was very sincere. I feel that time does not represent everything. I only know that when I first saw Yuji, there was a voice in my heart telling me that it was her. His gaze met Elder Lu's weathered eyes, and he did not back down at all. I can be sure that in this life, there will never be another woman who can give me such a feeling. I will definitely not let Yuji down. Such words were not enough to move Elder Lu's expression. Empty words have no proof. Our Lu family cannot be compared to the He family. What if Yuji is wronged in the future? He Lu was not angry at all in the face of such doubts. In his opinion, it was normal for the Lu family to be so concerned about Gu Shengyin. Chong Minggang looked like he couldn't wait to sell a product. There was no hesitation in his tone. With me, He Lu, around, I will not let Yuji be wronged in the slightest. Okay. Elder Lu looked at him. I heard that General He's words are worth 1,000 gold, and you never lie. I hope you can really do it. Chapter 1587. At first, the atmosphere between Elder Lu and He Lu was still a little tense. Gu Shengyin was worried that the two of them would argue. She didn't expect that the more they talked, the more they got along, and the more the smile on her grandfather's face became. When he heard He Lu say that he knew how to play chess, Elder Lu's eyes lit up. General He, are you willing to play a few rounds with me? He Lu said, Elder Lu, just call me He Lu, otherwise, Xiao He and Xiao Lu are fine too. When he said this, it meant that he really treated Elder Lu as an elder. One had to know that he didn't say such things in front of Chong Minggang. Elder Lu laughed. Then I'll be thick-skinned and call you Xiao He. If you don't mind, you can call me Grandpa Lu. After all, the relationship between the two of them hadn't been officially established yet, and they didn't know what the He family's attitude was. Elder Lu couldn't let people call him Grandpa directly. He Lu nodded slightly and called, Grandpa Lu. Elder Lu was in a good mood when he heard this. He invited He Lu into the study to play chess. He turned around and called Gu Shengyin's first aunt, saying that Yuji had brought her boyfriend over. He asked second brother and third brother to bring their wives over to meet him. When the two of them entered the study, first aunt gave Gu Shengyin a thumbs up. Gu Shengyin lowered her head slightly and smiled as if she was embarrassed. When it was almost dinner time, the Lu family came over one after another. When they heard that Gu Shengyin's boyfriend was playing chess with Elder Lu in the study, they were all surprised. One had to know that Elder Lu's study was very precious. If it wasn't someone who had really gained his approval, he wouldn't let them in easily. It seems that Yuji's boyfriend has really caught father's eye, second aunt said with a smile. They still didn't know He Lu's identity. When He Lu accompanied Elder Lu downstairs, the three brothers of the Lu family were all stunned. Fortunately, the three of them weren't inexperienced. Although they were surprised, they maintained their poise and greeted He Lu with a smile. It was a sumptuous dinner, and they had a good time. When Gu Xingyin sent He Lu home, he held Gu Xingyin's hand. "Your family is very good." Gu Xingyin couldn't help but nod when she thought of the Lu family who treated her like a treasure. He Lu thought for a moment and said, "I'll pick you up tomorrow." Gu Xingyin was puzzled. "What are you doing?" He Lu's face was calm. "Meet my parents and grandfather." Gu Xingyin. "Is it really okay for you to talk about such an important matter in such a casual tone?" "Why are you in such a hurry?" she asked. He Lu nodded. "It's rare for me to have a long holiday. I'll be returning to the army in 5 days. Before I go back, I want to settle things with you." He was always greedy and wanted to settle down early. In this way, everyone would know that this girl belonged to He Lu and no one would dare to have any ideas about her. Those who wanted to bully her would think twice before making a move to see if they could withstand He Lu's wrath. Gu Xingyin raised her head and looked at He Lu. The wind at night was a little strong, but he stood there like a barrier that would never fall. He blocked all the wind and noise outside and couldn't touch her at all. She nodded. "Okay." Chapter 1588. After Gu Xingyin sent He Lu off and returned to the Lu family, she was immediately interrogated by her curious uncles and aunts. She sighed and simply explained how she and He Lu met, knew each other, and then got together. Of course, the part in the car was too embarrassing, so she glossed over it a little. "That's it?" Third aunt was a little surprised. Gu Xingyin nodded innocently. Second aunt, who had a fiery temper, was also in disbelief. "So, the two of you have only known each other for less than 2 weeks and you're already talking about marriage?" Gu Xingyin nodded again. Everyone in the Lu family was speechless. It was simply the most standard of a flash marriage. But when they saw how Gu Xingyin and He Lu interacted with each other, they felt that there was a tacit understanding between them. They didn't seem like a young couple who had just confirmed their relationship. Maybe, it's really fate? First aunt concluded. Gu Xingyin stayed at the Lu family's house that night. Chongming had just called to ask, but Gu Xingyin casually found an excuse to dismiss him. When they found out that Gu Xingyin was going to the He family's house tomorrow, the aunts were very concerned about this matter. Actually, if the other party was from an ordinary family, they wouldn't be so worried. It was because the He family's status was too high that they were nervous for Gu Xingyin. They were afraid that she wouldn't do well and would be looked down upon. Actually, Gu Xingyin wasn't that nervous. She was probably the calmest one out of them all. After all, she had experienced all sorts of things. It wasn't easy for her to be nervous again. She had even met so many gods. Really, meeting her boyfriend's parents wasn't a big deal. The next day, when He Lu came to pick her up, he specially told her not to be nervous. Gu Xingyin smiled and said that she really wasn't nervous. Just as she had expected, the He family was a century-old family. They actually had a good upbringing and wouldn't make things difficult for a junior. She felt quite relaxed. After she left, Old Master He and He Lu's parents thought highly of her. Old Master He, calm in the face of change, dignified and generous. "She's a good match." This was a normal evaluation from an elder. He Lu's father, "She's a good girl." Her family background, personality, and style of conversation are all outstanding. This was an affirmation from her boyfriend's father. He Lu's mother, "I like this daughter-in-law. She's very pretty." This was the highest compliment a granny could give her. In short, there were no problems. Both parties had a good relationship, and their families were satisfied. To He Lu, it meant that they could get their marriage certificate. He and Gu Xingyin had agreed that the wedding would be held after his next wedding leave, but they could get the marriage certificate first. Gu Xingyin was helpless against the man's persistence. However, she still agreed to his request very indulgently. When they came out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Gu Xingyin was a little surprised. This was the first time she had gotten a marriage certificate without even going through a proposal. Now that he thought about it, it was a little novel. The two of them did not tell anyone about the marriage certificate. This was also what Lu said. He was afraid that people would look down on Gu Xingyin because of this, because there was no wedding. Wait for me to go to the military and submit the application immediately. Yuji. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead gently. When I come back, I'll hold a grand wedding for you and let everyone know that you're my wife. Okay. Chapter 1589. After the two registered their marriage, Lu accompanied Gu Xingyin to the mall. He didn't usually come to places like this, but he knew that girls usually liked places like this. Gu Xingyin wasn't very passionate about this, but she saw Lu's intentions and didn't reject him. Coincidentally, she saw a familiar face in the mall. An. She was still dressed in branded clothes and was holding a friend's arm. The two of them were carrying a few big shopping bags and were chatting with smiles on their faces. Gu Xingyin even heard the girl beside An say enviously, An, you're so rich now. The daughters of rich families are indeed different. Any piece of clothing here is worth 2 months of my salary. Gu Xingyin stopped in her tracks and stood there with a faint smile. An listened to the compliments of the girl beside her proudly. She liked this feeling. Then, she raised her head and saw Gu Xingyin looking at her. An's heart skipped a beat. The girl beside her was still chattering. An felt embarrassed and quickly patted her hand. Stop talking. The girl was still a little confused. Following An's gaze, she saw Gu Xingyin and Lu not far in front of them. With just one glance, her eyes revealed a look of amazement. This pair of man and woman, if placed in a crowd, would definitely be a very eye-catching existence. If the two of them stood together, they would be even more eye-catching. There were even passers-by who secretly looked around, suspecting that it was just two celebrities taking photos on the street. Who is this? The girl secretly tugged at the corner of An's shirt. An looked at Gu Xingyin a little unnaturally. The eldest daughter of the Chong family. The girl's eyes lit up. The eldest daughter of the Chong family, then isn't that your... An's hand pinched her arm hard and the girl instantly stopped talking. An was actually quite embarrassed. She had pretended to be the daughter of a wealthy family and flaunted her wealth in front of her friends, but in the end, she was caught red-handed by someone who knew the truth. What An was most afraid of was being found out by Gu Xingyin. After all, she knew very well that she had no status in front of Gu Xingyin. She was afraid that Gu Xingyin would expose her on the spot. If that happened, she would really be embarrassed. In the end, Gu Xingyin's eyes slowly fell on her, and then swept down. She looked at the pile of luxury brands and did not say anything. She turned her head to Lu and said, "Let's go." Lu didn't know who An was, but he could see that Gu Xingyin didn't like her. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, he nodded and left with Gu Xingyin. From the beginning to the end, Gu Xingyin had no intention of talking to An. An stood where she was and watched the two of them walk past as if they didn't exist. Her friend whispered, "Isn't the eldest daughter of the Chong family your sister? Why is she ignoring us?" An forced a smile and said, "She has always been arrogant and has never treated me as a sister." Her friend said, "Oh," to show that she understood. Immediately, her attention turned to another matter. "Is the man beside your sister her boyfriend? He's so handsome." An was a little absent-minded. "Maybe." On the other side, Lu looked at Gu Xingyin and asked, "That girl just now, is she someone you know?" Chapter 1590. Although this was a family scandal, Gu Xingyin felt that there was nothing that couldn't be said. She briefly told Lu about Anshur and her daughter. "That girl just now was the cheap sister that lived in my house for a while." Lu's face darkened. The matter between Zhong Minggang and Madame An and her daughter was not a secret in the capital circle. Many people secretly laughed at Zhong Minggang for being devoted his whole life. In the end, when his wife died, he showed his true colors. Lu of course didn't know about this, but Chi did. Especially after knowing that the eldest daughter of the Zhong family might become his future sister-in-law, he told He Lu everything he knew about the Zhong family. If it was someone unrelated to him, He Lu naturally wouldn't spend any effort on it. But when the pitiful daughter in the story became the person he cherished, He Lu said in a low voice, so after that woman was kicked out of the Zhong family, she still flaunted her identity as the daughter of the Zhong family. Why didn't you expose her? Gu Xingyin shook her head. In a place like the business center, there are too many familiar people. If I quarreled with her, no matter what the result was, it would be a loss of face for the Zhong family. She said, the Yin family's mother and daughter were kicked out of the Zhong family, but I saw today that Wen is clearly living the life of a young lady. People like them don't need others to do anything, they can just kill themselves. Gu Xingyin wasn't wrong at all. And Yan and Wen were kicked out of the Zhong family by the furious Chongming gang. Other than the clothes on their body and their own documents, they didn't take anything out. And in the past few years, they didn't save a single cent of the money that Chongming gang gave them. Under these circumstances, the only asset left of the Yin family's mother and daughter was the apartment that they bought in the early years. In the capital, an apartment was worth a lot of money. And Yan had been raised by Chongming gang all these years, and had long become a rich lady who only knew how to drink tea, play, and shop. Asking her to go out and work to earn money? Obviously, it wasn't realistic. And Wen? Although she had the title of a graduate from a famous university, she didn't have any experience. She went to many companies to interview, but the salary that was offered couldn't meet her requirements. It was still the same sentence, Chongming had just raised her heart. Relying on ordinary work alone couldn't sustain her demand for famous brands. Moreover, Wen herself didn't care about that little bit of salary that couldn't even afford to buy a handbag if she worked herself to death. So the mother and daughter thought about it, and sold their house in the capital. The house was sold for a large sum of money. If they had a good life, it would be enough for them to buy a house in a small city and live a carefree life. But obviously, the Yin family's mother and daughter weren't people who were willing to live a mediocre life. Today's Wen's. She loosened her grip and instantly returned to the style of a rich young lady. Gu Xingyin took a quick glance at the clothes she was wearing today. The total cost of the entire outfit was more than 6 digits. Gu Xingyin didn't need to dirty his hands to deal with people like this. By the time they spent all their money, based on their style, it would be the end of the road for them. Chapter 1591. After accompanying Gu Xingyin for a few days, He Lu returned to the army. Gu Xingyin returned home. Ever since he found out that his daughter had a boyfriend like He Lu, Chongming gang's attitude towards Gu Xingyin had completely changed. When they chatted, He Lu was always the topic of conversation. The meaning behind her words was to persuade her daughter to quickly hook up with He Lu, this rare golden turtle husband. To be honest, every time Gu Xingyin heard such words, he would feel uncomfortable and flustered. The only thing Chongming gang cared about was whether he could become in-laws with the He family. If that was the case, how much could he benefit from this marriage? He didn't even care if He Lu treated his daughter well. Fortunately, these days didn't last long. Gu Xingyin's uncle sent news. He said that everything was ready. Gu Xingyin knew very well what this meant. On Tuesday, the Chong group held a shareholders' meeting. This meeting was initiated by Chongming gang. It was about a major project that the Chong group was about to start and needed the support of a majority of shareholders. In fact, such a meeting would usually be approved. After all, Chongming gang was injured 25% of the shares, while Gu Xingyin had 30%. Just the father and daughter alone held more than half of the shares in the Chong group. As long as his daughter was on his side, Chongming gang could be said to be in an invincible position. Chongming gang was very confident. After his wife died, he became his daughter's only family. Even if there were some disagreements in the past, how could there be overnight hatred between father and daughter? He never thought that there would be a time when his daughter would be at odds with him. Gu Xingyin was dressed very formally today. The pure black business suit made her look capable and experienced. Her hair, which was usually scattered behind her head, was neatly tied up. She looked like a strong woman who had been in the workplace for a long time. Because she was the largest shareholder, even if she was very young, her position was very high. This project was approved without a doubt. Chong Ming-gang smiled complacently. Just as he was about to announce the end of the meeting, Gu Xingyin suddenly stood up. There's one more thing I need to discuss with you all. Chong Ming-gang frowned. Yuji? Usually, this daughter of his would just sit there quietly without any sense of presence. What was she trying to do? Gu Xingyin looked around the room with a smile and said, as a major shareholder of the Zhong Group, I think that Mr. Zhong Minggang is too old to be the head of the Zhong Group. Now, I propose that Mr. Zhong Minggang be dismissed from his position in the Zhong Group. I, Zhong Yuji, will take over his position. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The hundreds of shareholders below were discussing animatedly. However, if someone observed carefully at this moment, he would find that many major shareholders who held a lot of shares of Chang's group were very calm when they heard the news, as if they had already known what would happen. As for Chong Minggang, his face had already turned ashen when Gu Xingyin said her first sentence. By the time Gu Xingyin finished speaking, his face had completely darkened. Zhong Yuji, what do you mean? He questioned. Gu Xingyin looked back at him without dodging. Father, you're old. Chapter 1592. Chong Minggang only felt a surge of anger in his heart. He had guarded against the Liu family, but he didn't expect that his daughter would do such a thing. He turned around and said coldly, I don't agree. He raised his voice and said, although Yuji is my child and the largest shareholder of the Chong Group, she has never learned anything about the business world and has no experience in handling company affairs. Taking over the company rashly like this won't do any good to the development of the Chong Group. Gu Xingyin had long known that Chong Minggang would not wait for death. However, since she dared to say such words, she must have been fully prepared. Let's vote, father. Gu Xingyin said calmly, if more than half of the shareholders support me, father, you should give up your power. Chong Minggang looked at the shareholders who were discussing below. Even though he knew that Gu Xingyin must be prepared, if he agreed to her, he would obviously be in a passive position, but he couldn't say anything. He looked at the results of the vote with a cold face. It was expected. Chong Minggang looked at his old partners who had worked with him for many years. One by one, they voted for his daughter, and his vision turned black. He didn't know if he should be angry, or because he despised the so-called friendship in the business world. Gu Xingyin didn't have a smug smile on her face. Instead, she said to Chong Minggang in a low voice, Father, you can retire in peace. I will let you spend your old age in peace. Chong Minggang's mind was very dizzy, but he forced himself not to show anything. He sneered and said, then I'll see what you can do. He wasn't in a hurry at the moment. As long as his daughter really got the hang of it, she would find that managing a large listed company wasn't as simple as managing a small private studio. When the time came, she would beg him to go back. When the results were out, Chong Minggang snorted coldly. He didn't even say anything. He snorted coldly and left with a flick of his sleeves. The next day, the news was announced in the newspapers, financial news, and even social media. The Chong Group has changed. The young chairman has become the new leader. When Wen saw the news, she was having a facial massage with her friend at the beauty salon. The girl looked at the news on her phone and said in surprise, Wen, your sister has become the president of Chang's group. And Wen's face stiffened. She had always told her friends that her mother had married Zhong Minggang and she had become the young miss of the Zhong family. Nominally, she was Chong Yuji's sister. If she hadn't been chased out of the Zhong family, she would be flattering herself at most. However, the fact that she was chased out of the Chong family was too embarrassing. Therefore, Wen never told her friends about it. They thought that Wen had been living in the Zhong family all this time and was still the daughter of the Zhong family. Only Wen herself knew how guilty she felt every time she said those words. Seeing that Wen didn't say anything, her friend looked at her strangely. Wen could only say, is that so? The girl asked suspiciously, Wen, don't tell me you only know about this now? And Wen smiled awkwardly and didn't say anything. She really just found out about it. Chapter 1593. And Wen's reaction made her friend a little suspicious. And Wen suddenly became rich. In the past, she looked like an ordinary person who didn't have to worry about food and clothing. But 2 months ago, she suddenly started to wear branded clothes and spend extravagantly. Of course, she was very envious. After asking, and Wen proudly said that her mother had married a rich man and become a rich lady. As for herself, she had transformed into a pampered young lady of a wealthy family. When she saw An Wen's appearance, she also had doubts. But An Wen looked proud and even said that she would invite her to the Zhong family's villa to play if there was a chance, so her doubts were dispelled. But now, she started to have doubts again. If An Wen really became a rich lady of the Zhong family, how could she not know about such a big thing happening at home? How could she leisurely follow her out for a massage? And Wen's friend said tentatively, Wen, you said before that you would take me to the Zhong family's villa to play when you have time. Then when do you think you'll be free? I've never been to the villa before. After she asked this question, her gaze was fixed on An Wen's face. Sure enough, after hearing her words, An Wen's face flashed with a trace of unnaturalness. She stammered and said, This. Let's talk about it another day. Right now, the family is very busy and I don't have time to entertain you. You don't have time to entertain me, but you have time to take me shopping every day? The girl sneered in her heart. She and An Wen were just ordinary friends. After An Wen suddenly became rich, she found a few opportunities to get close to her and slowly became good friends with her. She originally wanted to get close to An Wen because she saw that An Wen had become rich and wanted to use her to get to know a few rich young masters. But now, it seemed that things weren't as simple as An Wen said. At least, her identity as a rich lady was very problematic. The girl didn't say anything and continued to talk to An Wen with a smile. But when An Wen invited her to have dinner together, she smiled and refused. Seeing An Wen take a taxi and leave, the girl was even more certain of her guess in her heart. If she really became a rich lady, would she not even have a car? The girl called another friend of hers. Since she wanted to hook up with a rich second generation, she would naturally know a few like-minded friends. Among them, there would even be some who had already succeeded. The person she was asking was one of her sisters who had successfully become the temporary girlfriend of a rich second-generation heir. Hearing her asking about the Chong family, the other party was obviously surprised. Why are you asking about the Chong family? The woman still casually found a reason. I saw the news today and it seems that he's quite rich. I want to know more. The young lady seemed to have misunderstood her meaning, thinking that she had set her sights on the Zhong family, so she smiled and said, You'd better not have any ideas about the Zhong family. Madame Zhong just passed away a few months ago. The position of the legal wife is still there, but the Chong group is now in the hands of the eldest daughter of the Chong family. It's not a good choice. And Wen's friend pretended to be confused and asked, The eldest daughter of the Zhong family is in charge? Didn't the Chong family have any sons? Only one daughter? Yes, Mrs. Chong only gave birth to a daughter and no son. Speaking of which, there was a joke in the Chong family some time ago. And Wen's friend hurriedly asked, What joke? The person on the other end said, It seems that not long after Madame Chong passed away, Chairman Chong brought a mother and daughter back. He said that he met his true love, but who doesn't know that they are probably his mistresses?